Hi, I'm Gavin Newsom, your Lieutenant Governor, here virtually and appropriately considering the purpose of this conference, here to welcome all of you and to thank you for your interest, for your commitment and your resolve, and more important, your participation in helping us design a 21st century pedagogy of active and engaged learning. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we're focused on. The ability now for technology to be that platform for engagement, to allow opportunities to people that never have had those opportunities to get world-class curriculum, to have the opportunity to have self-paced learning, moving away from the old industrial mindset, again, that's been around for 150 years of one-to-many, standardized mass education, to now customize education around you. That's the world we're living in. That's the world direction we're going. And so I want to again thank all of you for your participation. And one thing I know intimately well is students are the greatest force for change. And you haven't been at the table yet. And so that's why I'm really grateful to this organization for bringing you to the table and now being forceful participants. And I look forward to taking your ideas and your ideals to navigate, again, a world where everything is changing, where we're going through this remarkable transformation. And it requires new thinking, respect to the past, but a willingness now to embrace the future and all it has to offer. And online education is going to be a big part of our fate and future.
Welcome everyone to Evolve California Higher Education, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Great. Thank you, Myra. She just stole my entire introduction. Welcome to the Hub. Yeah. And first of all, let me thank the Hub for allowing us to use this very, very unique setting. The Hub is going to be kind of the social place for folks to come together, we hope, in Los Angeles to talk about very important issues facing us today. So I want to thank the Hub first and foremost. And I'd be remiss to not thank our generous founder, Dr. Gary Michelson, and his wife, Alya, for funding 20 Million Minds, funding this conference, and allowing us to do the work that we do every single year. We've been in existence now since 2011, and our entire focus at the foundation is affordability and a path to completion. And our sweet spot, if you really kind of want to know what the foundation is working on, is community colleges. As you know, the issue is extremely important, and feeding that into our University of California and CSU system, and of course our private institutions. My job is real simple today. I get to introduce two moderators in a moment who will kind of help us kind of formulate the student perspective. And then I get to introduce in a moment my good friend Holly Mitchell, Senator Mitchell, who's made the trek here from Los Angeles. But this is one of those weird weekends in the legislature where we have some holidays coming, so I want to thank Holly in a minute. But let me just kind of framework a bit what this conference is about this year. This is our second conference at 20 Million Minds. Last year we started about this time in January with a conference called Reboot. And the importance of that conference was to talk about these new and upcoming online modes called MOOCs. And the year kicked off in January, and it was a rock and roll year for MOOCs and the discussion about MOOCs in general. And I can tell you that last year's conference at UCLA featured those you know by name, like Daphne Kohler and Sebastian Thrun. We had Jeff Salingo. We had just about anyone in the higher education space talking about how MOOCs were going to transform higher education. We had Senator Steinberg here, Lieutenant Governor Newsom, talking about the bottleneck issue and how they might be able to help us in that regard. And out of that particular conversation, really, I would say kind of a revolution occurred on our campuses. And I thought Senator Steinberg's introduction of Senate Bill 520, you may have read about this in the New York Times, where the senator said, if we can't solve the bottleneck, if our institutions aren't offering enough online, maybe third-party providers can and should. And out of that came a reaction, which is always a good thing. Came a reaction from UC, CSU, our community colleges. And I think the reaction kind of basically, I call it now an evolution. So here we find ourselves evolved 1 year later. And if I could summarize what I have seen from the outside, I think we saw our institutions say the following, and that is, we want ownership of our own programs. We have the capacity to offer online in better ways. Our faculty deserve a place at the table. Our faculty needs developmental dollars in order to achieve what we have to achieve. And I saw a great reaction from each of our institutions. UC making a big announcement this year to share the courses necessary in online, so a student taking a course at UC Santa Cruz could actually count if they're going to another institution in the UC system. We saw the governor give $16.9 million to our California community colleges, asking them to come up with their best rendition of an online marketplace. And we've seen CSU really kind of evolve from, if you will, just degree Pearson-based online to something different. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the major difference between last year's conference and this year's conference is the following. Last year's conference was extremely high level and top down. This year's conference is absolutely bottom up. So we start with our students. And I can tell you we've had a lot of conversations with students. My conversations with Cynthia Flores, who's behind me and will be speaking today from the UC Regents, really started like something of the students need a online Bill of Rights. The students voices need to be heard at each of the systems. And so from that conversation comes this conference. And so I hope as you are watching, I hope that as you are participating, you'll see and we will understand a more of a student perspective on online as we move forward. If this is the year of university-owned online, of faculty-controlled online, if we can truly find ways to coordinate content, coordinate classes, coordinate the credit, all of these three important aspects need to be pulled together in an online environment this year, but it will not make a bit of difference if it does not have the scaffolding support systems necessary to make students successful. And this is why our students are so critical today in this conversation. So with that, let me end and simply introduce Holly Mitchell, Senator Mitchell. In the world of politics, the person that has the longest term has the most power. So we have the most powerful person in the state Senate here today. Holly is a member of a very small body called the Senate Rules Committee. If you want to really know what that is about, it's not just about critical appointments and allowing those appointments to do the good work for the state of California, but it's also a place where the governor constantly will call and ask for appointments and others to be moved through. So if you're thinking about a UC regent, a CSU trustee, a Board of Governors appointee, if you're thinking about the State Board of Education, if you're thinking about education in general, the people on those boards make critical decisions, and Holly is one of three who will determine the fate of those particular appointments. Now, that's just appointments. Let me just say also that in terms of the bills moving through committee, where those bills go, as you probably know, is very critical to the lifeblood of moving concepts through. The Senate Rules Committee actually directs bills, hopefully, to the right places. And so we thought it would be more appropriate to have Holly kick us off for this year. I think Senator Mitchell, if I could just give you a summary of our relationship, we've known each other for many, many years, going back to State Senator Watson, now going to Congressman Watson, and now with Holly on the State Senate, I think we're in all good hands. So I can only tell you that we're very happy you came today, and please come up and say a few words. Appreciate it.
So good morning. I'm glad Senator Flores is no longer in Sacramento because he understands the power of Rules Committee. A number of my colleagues said, why do you want Rules Committee? It's a lot of work. I said, They clearly aren't as strategic as the senator. Let me start by saying hashtag Holly J. Mitchell so I can get some love from the guys over there. Give hashtag Holly J. Mitchell. And I'm glad to be here today since we're here talking about education. Full self-disclosure, I am playing hooky We're not typically in session on Fridays, but if Monday is a holiday, we have session on Friday. So I had to get permission to not be in session, and so I'm very glad. I did that because this is A, because Dean asked me, and B, because this is a critical emerging issue. I'm thrilled to be here and to be exposed and introduced to the hub. What a novel concept. And so I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for having me. You all know, Dean just talked about kind of the legislative history. If you all were at the conference last year, you know what happened in the legislature. You know what happened with President Pro Tem Steinberg's bill. You know where the governor's commitment lies, and hopefully you know about the amazing experience that took place at the White House. I think it was just yesterday with this rollout of this overall commitment to helping kids finish college, and the millions of federal dollars and the incredible public-private partnerships that have been put in place. I was meeting with President Tim White of the CSU system on Tuesday, I think. He was taking a red eye out the next day, and so he gave me a little commercial about what they were going to experience in DC. So it's very exciting. Posse and just all of the organizations are going to come together to really try to help particularly young kids of color be successful in this global economy and this market. And from my perspective, that's critical given the district I represent. I'm state senator for the 26th senatorial district, which is just west of here. Very diverse, eclectic district, represents everything from, I go from the Hollywood sign down to Hyde Park, from Miracle Mile, Culver City, a little piece of Cheviot Hills, Mid-Wilshire, to Expo Park, USC. Very diverse, ethnically, socioeconomically. Very diverse in terms of the experience of a ninth grader in high school. When I was in the assembly, I represented UCLA and had the harsh realization that they were kids who would either graduate or not from high schools within walking distance of UCLA and would never step foot on that campus. Within walking distance of that institution, and would never step foot on that campus for a variety of reasons. Either their high schools didn't even offer AP courses, not that they couldn't get in them. How do you get in UC now without having a 5.0? Thank God I'm old. I would have never gotten in. And so how do you compete when your school doesn't even offer AP classes? So we've got a lot of work to do collectively, and I'm proud to be here and stand with you. I'm also chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus. There are 9 African American members of the legislature, 2 of us in the Senate, the balance are in the Assembly. And we made a very bold step and declaration for ourselves last year. In years past, the Black Caucus had done a kind of state of Black California and kind of gone on a road show and developed this report that basically summarized all the negative things impacting Black people in California. We are poorer, we are sicker, we have more fragile incomes, more fragile housing. It's, you read the report, you just don't want to get out of bed the next day. And we decided as a caucus that we would approach our work collectively as a caucus a little differently and identify 2 what we're calling policy pillars that we would then develop for ourselves stretch goals that we could hold ourselves accountable to by the year 2020. As legislators, we tend to think in 2-year increments because of the legislative session. We're going to solve all the state's ills in 2 years or during my term. I got to get this fixed before I term out so I can claim credit for it. We recognize that doesn't work in the real world. And if we were going to really hold ourselves accountable by making real setting stretch goals that we could then measure our success against, we needed to spread it out. So some of our newest members of the legislature of the Black Caucus will be there through 2020, so we set that as our date. Our 2 policy pillars are education and something we're calling Black enterprise. In education, we're very clear. We want to make sure that every African American student has access to high quality early care and education. Secondly, we want to increase the African American high school graduation rate by 25%. 25% may sound low to some of you. It may sound huge. She just said, that's huge. I said they were stretch goals. Alameda County, the African American high school graduation rate is 22%, something just painful. Our third goal under the education policy pillar is to increase the number of African American students who matriculate out of our publicly funded institutions, community colleges, CSU, UC. And so we're looking at budget strategies, legislative strategies. All the caucus members have held town halls in their district to talk about these critical issues. We've been very involved in the last year with the whole local control funding formula, some of you may be aware of, where the governor was very aggressive last year, where he said we have kids who are failing, who are coming from failing communities, and we need to reprioritize the funding in K through 12 to acknowledge that reality. All K through 12 experiences aren't created equal. And so kids who are English language learners, kids in foster care, need to get extra resources to improve their likelihood of success. So we've been working very closely with the administration, because that sounds great, but the devil is always in the details, and how do we make that come to fruition? And so we're working closely with the State Board of Education. I'm working closely with LAUSD and Culver City, small school district in my district, to make sure that the governor's vision and legislative intent actually comes to be. So again, I think I come to this and the work that you're doing from a perspective of how do we make sure that historically disadvantaged kids, kids in poverty, kids of color, improve their ability to thrive and be successful in institutions of higher learning. And I'm sure you know many of the statistics, but I will share some with you, because it's the work that I focus on every day. California has the highest poverty rate in the country. Not Alabama, not Louisiana, not Mississippi. Based on a new way in which we're measuring poverty, the federal poverty level, FPL, is a very antiquated metric. And so based on a new way of measuring poverty that factors in the realities of regionalism, it costs more for a 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco than it may do in Modoc County. So we're factoring in transportation costs, housing costs. Based on that metric, California has the highest level of poverty in the country. In 2011, 1 in 6 Californians lives in poverty, 1 in 4 children. 1 in 4 children lives in deep poverty. You know, there are levels of poverty, can you imagine? Deep poverty is defined as a family of 4 earning, what do you think, a year? Not that bad, $16,500. A family of 4 earning $16,000 a year constitutes deep poverty. 1 in 4 California's children live in deep poverty. 26.9% of LA County residents live in deep poverty. And so when we acknowledge that reality, it's clear that poor Black and brown students in California need all the resources, all the help that we can do to support them. And from our perspective, I don't really care what it takes for our kids to be able to grow up literate and employable. I believe as a legislator, I have a responsibility to do what it takes. And if the best way to do that is partnering with for-profits, nonprofits, MOOCs, UC, community college, whoever is ready to step up, stand up, and make sure that we create opportunities for children to have success, I am your partner. The U.S. is only ranking 12th in the number of college graduates it produces, and the graduation gap, again, between America's high and low income students is significant. High school graduates from wealthy families nearly always get college degrees, while only half of those in poor families ever even attend college. Whereas most college graduates graduate within 6 years, for low-income students, only 25% do so. And again, we all know that the market for jobs is clearly now global. And so again, into that situation, the MOOCs have come to be. And it's important because due to the last decade of fiscal challenges we all faced as Californians, and I faced as a legislator, where the state was in effect broke, and we cut deeply into the core fabric of critical programs that were designed and exist and operated by government to support all of us as Californians. We're now trying to pull our way out of it. But when you see situations like the City College of San Francisco, whose urban student population is doing relatively well academically, but because of financial pressures, much of which has been due to us, they may lose accreditation after the semester. CCSF illustrates the challenge higher education is facing. Cost is the single largest factor in determining not only what students and parents buy, but what government is also willing to buy. During the economic crisis, California colleges turned away 500,000 applicants for whom we lacked capacity. I happened to be at UCLA campus 2 years ago, the day the letters go out to the freshmen. And you know, the deans were sharing with me, we got this many applicants, we're going to admit this many, and that was before Prop 30 passed. We weren't quite sure what their funding would be, and they were in a position where if it hadn't passed, they were going to have to reach out to some of those freshmen who they had admitted to rescind their admissions. So we were in a really, really bad place, I think, as a state. In 2012, Cal grants were cut by $134 million, which hurt students at for-profit colleges more than others by lowering maximum awards to $8,000 that year overall, with a $4,000 max at for-profits, leaving more loans or dropping out as the only alternatives many students had. Although MOOCs open wide the doors of opportunity without necessarily opening public coffers, students have to walk through the door to reach their life's destination. So unless we prepare kids academically and technologically and support their success financially, somebody somewhere may succeed through MOOCs, but it may not be poor kids or kids of color, because online education will also reduce barriers to education and U.S. jobs to college grads all over the world. Right now, the 500,000 children growing up in deep poverty in this state are statistically unlikely to ever make it to, let alone through college. Yet they too must somehow eat and find housing, and all of us have a collective interest in making sure that there's opportunity for all. In 2016, our community college students will have to maintain a 2.0 GPA for 2 consecutive terms and complete half the classes they attempt each semester to keep their state grants. For some folks, college is their chosen career, but many low-income students attend college on a start and stop basis for years because that's all they can handle given their financial, academic, and family obligations. So one door opens, another closes, and money clearly matters. So it's in the legislature. Every bill introduced this last year to fund online college learning unfortunately failed passage. The most far-reaching one was introduced by the pro tem. I'm sure as you know, it would have set up a statewide mechanism for online course providers to offer transferable courses for credit throughout our 3-segment college system. But after taking amendments, which largely turned it into a study, he had to shelve it. He did so immediately after last July's report on the disappointing results of San Jose State's partnership with Udacity to offer 2 math and 1 statistics courses to 300 students. Half of them were considered at risk. 74% or more of those who took the courses in the classroom passed, while half or less passed the online version. This experiment was hailed by Governor Brown and was partially funded by the Gates Foundation, yet it's been shut down. San Jose's partnership for online with edX is, by contrast, doing well. Most students are doing better than they would without online course instruction. edX is a nonprofit and it uses blended learning, a mixture of traditional classroom and online instruction. The model seems to work best and is best accepted. That's critical because the annual Babson survey of online learning just surveyed about 4,700 colleges and found that whereas colleges which offer online instruction expect to tap it as a core part of their higher education, those at colleges which don't show growing opposition to this blended use. Once again, this difference reflects the struggle over scarce resources. Professors and administrators feel increasingly threatened by online instruction, especially when it's conducted by for-profit companies rather than by academia. I can tell you that when the online education advocates knock at the door of the state capitol, they are likely to find other higher learning professionals already at the table, expressing their fear for both the caliber of education and for their paychecks. If the online movement is to make progress, I strongly recommend that it embrace transparency. We've got to clean up our houses by denouncing rather than defending the many organizations that have, frankly, targeted at-risk students, giving them sometimes inferior educations as well as high debt. Treating online education as a business should not have to mean lousy schooling. It should mean broadening access to all who are ready to step up and take advantage of the opportunity. And good schooling is not just a pragmatic coursework. The notion that, quote, liberal education is intended to teach students to think critically on the assumption that thinkers are then better prepared to do is less popular, unfortunately, because of the global economic pressure for all classes to improve employability through education. And we hear that from the business owners across the state every day. There's this growing concern that California will ultimately not be able to provide the high-quality trained workforce they need to continue to be California employers. But the U.S. competes best when we nurture intellectual exploration. Our culture and lives are enriched as a result. Finally, I think the online collegiate experience must be designed to encourage at-risk students to succeed in completing their educations at an affordable cost. Graduating, not merely enrolling students, is our common goal. Challenging that online education must accept head on, because it's how we will move forward and succeed as a state that's competing in an ever-changing, ever-evolving global economy. I thank you for the opportunity to share with you today, and I'm not sure about the time and schedule, but there are a few questions. I'm looking to the moderators to see if that's appropriate.
Yeah, we have time if there's like one or two questions.
Excellent.
Is there any? Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll go ahead and move on, but I really appreciate
Thank you
everything
very
you
much
said.
for the opportunity to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, as a past politician, it's always amazing to me when we say, you know, we're open for questions, live politician here. And somehow at the end, walking out, I have 50 questions. We have 50 questions leaving the room. So it's always, Holly, thank you so much, Senator Mitchell. Let's give her another hand. We really appreciate her perspective. Okay, now we're going to turn to the reason we're here, and that is the students. We're going to have the conversation really about what online should be. I think Senator Mitchell mentioned the numerous issues surrounding online in the last year, and even as recently as the Babson study is just out a couple days ago. Let me just set a context for this week. It's been a huge week for higher ed. I mean, if you think about it, Monday started for our foundation with our founder, Dr. Gary Michelson, making a $50 million donation to USC to really kind of work on the biomed side of things. We were extremely happy to see that investment by our founder, and I can tell you that his investments will continue to solve problems that, quite frankly, need to be solved. Online is one of those, so you can expect us to be very active as a foundation this year. Now, that was Monday. Now, Tuesday, obviously, was Open SUNY, right? So kind of the rollout of one of the more massive online programs in the nation in one of our largest systems in New York. Wednesday, our foundation, I attended the White House Datapalooza on all of these apps that will really make enrollment and pushing admissions and all of the issues we're talking about here today and online more workable. So after a year of getting together a year ago at the White House, then ending up there on Wednesday, we all kind of talked and saw real applications being applied to a growing level of low minority income students moving through higher education. So that was Wednesday. Thursday, I believe yesterday, President Obama and Michelle Obama have pulled together an entire cadre of 100 college presidents plus to discuss if the issue we're talking about today, which is really low minority income students moving through higher education, a long overdue discussion. Great recommendations from that meeting yesterday. I understand our Chancellor, Bryce Harris, was at the table, which is always a positive, and a few other presidents from our systems. And today we end up Friday here at our conference on Evolve, talking about the practical applications of online. And so I think this week, hopefully, we'll kick the year off. And if I could just, before I introduce our two speakers, just kind of set a context to this for California and why it's so important. So we have 2.4 million students, largest system in the nation here in our California community college systems. 50% of African Americans and Latinos will test 3 levels below in developmental math. If you think about that. So even before you get to a college-bearing course, half of half will test into a path that, and here's the stat to remember, only 6% of them will complete and finally get to that college-bearing math course in 3 years. 6%. So if you kind of think about it, 94% working a path to completion that and somehow drops, they literally drop out. And from the state perspective, what a lost investment. You know, the LAO office tells us we pay $3,400 every time a community college student steps on the campus, day one. And now if we're losing that many students from semester to quarter, imagine the investment lost every single year by the state of California. So the message to the policymakers is simply invest more wisely, look and listen to students about what works if we're going to push online, and more importantly for the policymakers here today from UC, CSU, community colleges, it's really about if it isn't working for the students as they're listening to it, it probably isn't going to work in the practical world. And that really is the end result of hopefully of this conference today. So with that, let me introduce Isa Adney, who is a profound author, a very much of a thought leader in community colleges. She's come all the way out from Florida to join us in this horrible weather, which is probably matching when she left Florida. But she has been featured in USA Today, NPR. Her book is, I would recommend to any community college student in particular, or any counselor, or anyone interested in the space. We're very fortunate to have her out here today. She herself is a community college transfer, is that correct? And she'll give you a little more background on herself, but we were very happy to have her do the hard task today, and that is to really, I would say not necessarily pull information from our students, but more importantly, try to contain our students with all the comments they're probably likely to have when it comes to online and all the questions and issues that they have. So it's probably a dual role. So thank you for being here. Let's give her a hand, please. And on the other side of the table is is Phil Hill, who I can only say has written a great report for us, a study for the foundation. He is the co-founder of MindWires. Phil, if you're not following him on Twitter, you're not following higher education, because I would say that he is probably, from our foundation's perspective and those in the higher education space, the thought leader when it comes to how these types of programs need to be implemented. He's consulted to so many universities, but I can only say I'm proud that he represented my alma mater, UCLA, in some of those past dealings. But I will say we're very fortunate. He's got the tough role of trying to, as well with Isa, try to merge all of this together into a coherent discussion. So please give him a hand as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Isa.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Dean, and looking forward to this conference. I just wanted to, beyond the MindWires Consulting, I'm also a co-publisher along with my partner, Michael Feldstein, who also helped with the paper. We co-published the e-literate blog, and it's on online education, educational technology, but really focused on improving learning. From that context, I'm really excited and appreciate being invited to help moderate this conference because it's got a very necessary focus on getting much more of the student's perspective. So there's a lot on your shoulders today. We need to hear more from what student experiences are, what student perceptions are of the initiatives we're doing. So I also want to thank Dean and the 20 Million Minds Foundation and all the hard work that Sergio and Myra and the whole team has done to put this together. We need more opportunities to hear directly from students. So appreciate having the opportunity to help here today. And one thing I would point out, we have a storyboard graphic illustrator, Dana Weiss, who's working over on the side, who's going to be covering the themes that come out of the conference. And all of her material is going to be available digitally on the Evolve website after the fact. And I did want to alert Senator Mitchell that it is listed right now as $16.9 billion to the community college. So I know what your topic is next week as opposed to 16.9 million. So, but I think this is a great opportunity to capture the theme. So, and even during the break, we're going to have a chance where you can go up and put sticky notes and make comments on what you're hearing about that. So thank you very much, and turn it over to Isa.
Thank you. Well, I am so happy to be here. What excites me most about online education is how new it really is. I only graduated with my bachelor's in 2009, and at that point I had had no experience with online education, and yet a year later, there I was getting my entire master's degree online from the University of Illinois. So I think there is some incredible opportunity to serve all students, but especially what excites me the most is the opportunity to serve the students who are often underserved and underprivileged, and those students who often feel like people like me aren't college material, or people like me don't go to college. And I'm excited about anything that can help more students achieve that goal. My grandparents came here from Puerto Rico, and they didn't achieve education past the 4th grade. And they worked their life as a maid and a janitor, and they were able to buy a house with a pool. I thought they were the richest people in the world. And yet, that's not really a possibility anymore. So we have these huge populations whose parents maybe didn't go to college, and that was okay. Now their kids need to try to figure out and navigate this new system and need more space and more opportunities to achieve. And so it's a big problem, but what gives me hope is people like you, people who are going to be speakers, and the students here today that care. The conversations going on nationally excite me because people do care and people do want to solve this problem, and I think it starts with hearing from the students, something that actually doesn't happen in my mind as much as it should. I think they have so much to offer because we need to hear those day-to-day experiences. What is it actually like for these students every day to do the work, to deal with online, to deal with college, and make it work and get to that end goal? So I am very excited to introduce to you our incredible students who are going to be lending their experience and their stories and their day-to-day life throughout the day. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to hear briefly from each of them so you can get a feel for sort of who they are and where they're coming from and what informs their perspective, where they went to college, why they chose to go to college, and sort of why online and what worked about it for them and what didn't. So I'm going to start off with Joe Renteria. He will be graduating this spring with a BS in IT from University of Phoenix. Joe.
Hi, everyone. I want to start off to say that first of all, I wasn't a school person. I grew up with both my parents not going to school, and I thought school was too hard for me. That's the way I felt about school when I first started. But so basically, what I do, now is I'm an IT consultant. I'm 37 years old. I got 2 kids, and I work full time during the day, and at night. I work a part-time job as a project manager. And throughout high school, I wasn't like I said, I wasn't a high school person, so I dropped out in the 10th grade, and I just thought school was impossible for me. And moving on from there, just to get a little background about myself, I dropped out of high school, and right after high school, I went to go work for a company, and this company was an IT consulting firm, and I had taken a post-secondary school previously to obtain that job, and I worked at it as an IT person for about 5 years. I really had no education, just certifications, and it was just working as an IT consultant. It's like, you don't really work a full-time job, it's kind of like part-time. And so I worked for CompUSA after that for several years, and I learned how to fix computers, and I was very good at it. So I decided to open up a business. And opening up a business was a great experience for me. I had 8 employees at one time. And during that time, the economy started falling, and the school districts weren't doing as much business with me as they normally would. And I closed my doors. I decided to close my business. And I said, what do I do now? You know, I have no education. I couldn't be competitive out there. I couldn't apply for a job because the minimum was just getting a BS degree, you know, a bachelor's degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree. So I just one day decided to just go back to school. And the University of Phoenix made that possible for me. I'm a full-time online student, and I've had a great experience with them. And it's been as a matter of fact, I'm working on, you know, planning my master's degree as well with them. So other than that, that's my background, my story.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Very excited to get your perspective throughout. I have the greatest respect for parents who go back to college. I can't imagine, and it's just amazing. Next up, we have Louis Luortz. He is a Secretary and Finance Officer for the University of California Student Association, and he is currently getting his PhD in Political Science at UC Riverside.
Hi. Can everybody hear me? Oh, perfect. Whoa, reverb. So I just want to say a few things about myself. I am getting my PhD, but before that, I was at UC Riverside for my undergraduate degree. I got my undergrad in political science as well, with an emphasis in law and society and philosophy. And then during that time, my father was unemployed. So I had to work throughout my undergraduate career to help support both my family and myself while I was going through my undergraduate education. And to be honest, the only reason I probably finished within 4 years was because during high school, I had decided to take online classes at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. There was a high school program available. I think the tuition was about $3.50. It was amazing. It was an amazing deal. And it got rid of a few GE requirements. I was able to take on a second major just because I was on time. I finished my degree in poli-sci, and I got philosophy as a second major. During that time, I was working at UC Riverside at the Academic Resource Center. So I was tutoring students and counseling students who were struggling. I saw a lot of issues with our undergraduate education system, but I also saw a lot of positives. And so after that, I decided to go for a master's in education. And because I had seen one side, I had seen the student side, and I wanted to go into the other side, see what it's like to be an administrator, a policymaker, someone who does this for a living. So it worked because they actually had a degree. It was called Higher Education Administration and Policy. Perfect. So I got that, finished that in 2012. And then afterward, I decided to work as a researcher because I really enjoyed the policy side. So with a professor, Luciana Dar at UC Riverside, I decided to work for her for about a year. And we worked on issues of social justice, equity, the dimensions of equity in higher education, so access, opportunity, outcomes. And I did that for about a year, and while also preparing for graduate applications, because I decided I wanted to go back into political science, which led to the PhD program. But on the way there, during that prep, I took a lot of courses on Coursera.org, I believe, and it was really useful, really helpful, really insightful. I got to see how education had evolved since high school, online. It was a wonderful experience, and I believe I'm making a lot of strides towards the future now. I have a book chapter that was accepted for publication. It's coming out next month, so I'm really excited. And it's on online social networks and higher education.
Cool.
So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you. Next up, we have Melody Darden. She is starting her master's in public administration next week at Dominguez College. Melody.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Melody. I pretty much grew up in South Central LA. I came from a very diverse background family. where my dad was pretty much in gangs, and my mom, she pretty much was living a fast life, is what we called it. At 14, I was taken from my mom and I was awarded a court. And so at that time, I kind of struggled with, living in a foster home and group homes and things like that. And at that time, I'm the oldest of 3, and I knew at that time I had to do something to pretty much get my siblings out of the system. And I wanted to basically show them, no matter where our parents came from, we could do something different. We can, still go to school and achieve, our goals that we wanted to. I eventually graduated at 17 on honor rolls. I went to Cerritos College to get my AA. And then at that time, after I got my AA, I went back and I got my siblings, my younger brother and my sister. I then enrolled into University of Phoenix in 2004, where I was able to obtain my BS degree. And I was working full time, and I was taking online classes. And because of University of Phoenix, I was able to do, get my education, take care of my younger siblings, and still accomplish trying to get my career going, trying to get a foster home and things like that, because I wanted to basically give back to the community, the same thing that I was going through. So that's pretty much my background.
Thank you, Melody. One thing I love about Melody's story, we had dinner last night, got to hear more about her dreams of starting her own home, and it's something I hear a lot of students, that when we do help these students who come from, low-income backgrounds succeed, I find almost all of them want to give back, and they want to help other people who have been through what they've been through, and what better people, to do that. So Melody, I love you, I admire you so much. Next up we have Cynthia Flores. She is a student regent of the University of California, and she is currently in law school at UC Irvine.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I was born and raised in the beautiful city of Los Angeles. I am the daughter of a phenomenal woman who fled war-torn El Salvador in the mid-1980s in hopes of providing her family with a better future. My path to higher education was a bit difficult. I'm a first-generation person in the States, first person in my family to go to college, from a low-income community and household. We were often on state assistance just to make it by, and my mother was a single parent. That being said, during my senior year in high school, I somehow found a way to make it work, was accepted to UCLA, and my mother's first reaction to my acceptance was, how are we going to pay for it? In El Salvador, it's thought that only those that are very wealthy go into higher education. Needless to say, we made it work some way, shape, or form, and I graduated in 2010. My senior year at UCLA, I served as the first Latina student body president of UCLA in UCLA's history, and that was a great accomplishment for both myself, my family, and the university system as a whole, I believe. I am currently a law student at the University of California, Irvine School of Law. I also serve on the Board of Regents as a student regent. And because of my experience and non-traditional background, I've really had my priority on having access or helping achieve access for underrepresented, diverse students. And so that's been my I guess, point of reference throughout my experiences. Both at the undergraduate and graduate level. As a student at UCLA, I had very limited experience with online education. I had, I think, 2 courses that were gateway courses that utilized online instruction through like blogs or webinar kind of classroom dialogue, but nothing too extensive. As a law student, we're kind of old school and we believe in casebooks and cold calling. So we don't really incorporate a lot of online instruction. The online instruction that I have experienced is, as you can imagine, I have a very, very heavy travel schedule. And so I do have access to lectures that are recorded and then played back, and some interactive functions to ensure that I'm keeping my attention while they're instructing the lecture. And so that's been my experience with online education. I'm more on the receiving end in terms of how do we construct online education as the Board of Regents, to ensure that it engages students. So that's why I'm here, and thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Next up, we have Nancy Aparicio. She is at Cal State Northridge and will be graduating this spring with a BA in English Creative Writing.
Hello, everybody. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. My parents also fled from El Salvador as refugees during the Civil War. And growing up, it was very much, there was no choice. You had to go to college if you needed to have a better future. There was no choice. So it was very much, that was my only choice pretty much. But being in college, coming from parents that don't have the opportunity to give you as much as they would like to, you do have to, I had to obtain a part-time job, and that was where I was introduced to online classes. Unfortunately, some were fantastic, some really let me do what I had to do in order to get by financially, but there were some classes that did hinder me in the sense that they caused more stress, or they didn't allow me to have the one-on-one opportunity that I would have had if I had an instructor with a class full of peers. But aside from that, I do believe that online classes did allow me to graduate in 5 years instead of what would have been 5.5, because I did take a semester off because of a medical withdrawal. So in essence, it did allow me to really get ahead, but at the same time, I do believe that there are some things that could be worked out to allow students to have a better opportunity or a better experience.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Next up, we have Devon Graves. He is the chair of the California State Student Association. He is currently a junior at Cal Poly Pomona and will be graduating with a BA in political science the spring of 2015. Devon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity to share my story and listen to everyone's story. So thank you. I was the first to attend a four-year university in my family. Both my older sibling and younger sibling are both at the California Community Colleges currently. One kind of thing for me, being busy with student government and athletics, online classes were very helpful. I kind of got my first experience with hybrid and got to get the mix of being in lecture and then half online. And I had recently the opportunity to experience the CSU's pilot program of the online concurrent enrollment system that they've started. So I was able to take part in that last year and really experience having a professor who was teaching a class. I was eligible for units on my own campus who was a professor at Cal State East Bay. So that was a very fun experience and happy to take part of that, and I really enjoyed that experience. So I'm currently, again, in a fully online course that's offered through my university and a hybrid. And I think having that diversity and that opportunity to be a part of that type of learning has been very helpful. And I'm really interested in mixing online courses with the Polytechnic way of learning. I think that's what's unique about the Cal Poly Pomona campus and the Learn by Doing. So I really think taking that application of knowledge through online courses and trying to apply that to the Learn by Doing. But again, thank you for this opportunity, and that was my story.
Thank you, Devon. Next up, we have Dwayne Mason. He is the Vice President of University Affairs for the California State Student Association. He is a senior at Cal State Fullerton and will graduate with a BA in Studio Arts this spring.
Good morning, everyone. I feel like we're a little bit of like a Boyz II Men acoustic trio right here in the back. I guess what I really want to highlight more is, you like that one? I guess what I really want to highlight more is, I guess just the difference between my experience growing up compared to what my experience in college has been. Younger, I was very much introverted, very to myself, not really sure of what I wanted to do until I found out that I had gotten into Cal State Fullerton and decided to go into their arts program. But what I really value about my college experience has been the way that it's been able to open me up as a person. I'm an African American male as well as an openly gay male. And those are two things that are very important to me and that really define who I am as a person and my experiences. And once I got into college, I became very passionate about involvement and wanting to give back and learn about how our university works. And it started with going to games and supporting our teams and things like that, and it grew into really wanting to give back and really learn about higher education, even though I have no career plans rooted in education. And one of the reasons that I feel that online education and these different issues are so important to me and to the students in our system is really because, in spite of me being someone who has career goals that are more in art and music and very far from the political sphere and higher education in general, the reason I stay in college has really been because of the experiences that I've had and wanting to be able to give back and learn more so that I can use my voice in its unique, I guess, realm to sort of still convey those different things to students. And those are the things that I feel are very, very important to me. And it's really just about having that passion. Like I said, being more of an introverted kid, I was on a lot of online forums, things like that. I'm probably going to be Snapchatting at different times during this today. But I've always been someone who has really confided a lot in that digital world when I didn't feel like I had the strength or the ability to really speak in the real world. And my experiences with online courses and online education have really opened my eyes to some great benefits in online courses and also some really large pitfalls with online courses as well. But I definitely think it's something that can be for a lot of different people if it is used the right way.
Thank you, Dwayne. Last but certainly not least, we have Rich Copenhagen. He is the immediate past president for the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. He is currently at Lane College, graduating with an AA in Communications this spring, and will then transfer to Cal State East Bay. Rich.
What? Anyway, so my name is Rich Copenhagen. I've been a student at the community college system for a really long time, 5 years now. It's okay. I've traveled around the system a little bit. I've had a really good time doing it. I joined the community college system in part because my aunt was teaching Spanish there, and I didn't know much about the system at the high school that I went to. Most kids went to UC, and maybe if you were a little bit, you went to CSU. And so there was a lot of pressure on me to do that, and I wasn't in a position to do that. I wasn't ready to do that. I took my GED and left high school, and I'm ecstatic that I went to community college. I really found my passion here, and that's why I ended up at the Student Senate, serving for the last year and a half as the president of the organization that serves the entire system of students. And so I have a little bit of a complicated relationship with online education. I spent a lot of time in the Capitol talking about it and in the State Chancellor's office, and then I've experienced it myself a bit. My first semester at community college, I took History of Mexico online, and I failed. The teacher asked me, or the instructor asked me towards the withdraw day, she's like, "You're really not doing so hot. You might want to consider withdrawing, not get a mark on your record." And I was like, "No, I can finish this. I've got the whatever in me to do it." No. So I failed. That's one of the only class I've ever failed. And then I didn't take an online class for 4 years. Last year I took humanities online. I had to withdraw because I wasn't able to keep up with it. And during that in-between time, I had taken a hybrid class, 2 hybrid classes actually, which is half online and then you spend a day of the week in the classroom. One of them was critical thinking, and I was enormously successful in that class. Because of, I think, the linked nature. I didn't have to spend so much time going to campus and sitting on campus, but at the same time, there was an opportunity for me to sit down and connect with my professor and connect with the students and feel that it was important for me to be there and to do the work, in part because of those relationships. And so coming out of that experience and then kind of my 2 ventures into the fully online world, for me, fully online's been very challenging because it's hard to develop those personal connections. And so that's where I've really struggled personally, and I know a number of students who have struggled in that area. And then I know a lot of students who have been enormously successful with strictly online. And so for me, it's been a really mixed bag, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you, everyone. There we go. It's going to be a good day. I'm going to turn it over to Phil.
Actually, even though 20 Million Minds is sponsoring this conference, which is great, you and I have the microphone. So actually, I'd like to give just a couple more minutes if you have some questions of the group, and we'll
Are we
make
okay
up the
on
time.
Because we're 5 minutes into
We're
the next
taking it
one.
because you and I have the microphone. So.
All right. Works for me. I like it. All right. So I do have some more questions then. I want to know kind of, you guys can just jump right in. Would you recommend online classes to your peers? Why or why not?
I would highly recommend online courses, especially with people who have families, work full-time jobs. It's been a great experience for me.
I would say if you're going to take an online class, really know what your strengths are, because there are difficulties. For example, I took a math class and it was very difficult because part of it was you go to class and the other half you do your work in online, and it was taught so differently, so you have that disconnection. So I would really say, for example, I'm an English major, so an English class I could take it with a breeze, but when it comes to math, it's very difficult. You want that peer connection of, hey, can you help me, or the professor helping you, and that connection is very helpful. So I would say yes, if you know your strengths, if you know you could do it, because you don't want to take a class that you're setting yourself up for failure.
I think it, well, to be honest, okay, so taking an online class can be challenging. It takes a lot of motivation and self-determination to stay on track. It takes a lot of effort to not get derailed. There are deadlines. Assignments are due on certain days, regardless of how many days you may have to do the assignment, just like in a regular classroom setting. And I think it's an interesting opportunity for students, especially at the UC. I know they're still revamping the online system, and they're making more courses available every day. I saw a few the other day because I started planning out my spring schedule. I'm like, oh, well, this is really interesting. So I would definitely recommend them, but with that caveat that they really need to stay on it. You can't just stop them. So.
I'm curious, just by a show of hands, if all things are equal, cost, convenience, you had every choice in the world, how many of you would take online classes only? Yes. Okay, our IT guy, yes. Okay, just checking. I think that's interesting. A lot of you cite, and I've heard a lot, this kind of convenience thing. So can you guys kind of talk about that and where online has maybe opened up opportunity for you because of your schedule and other things going on in your life? What that meant to you?
I would say for me that online education really allowed me to be as involved as I've been in college, with higher level positions. I was our student body president last year. I was president of my fraternity for a year, and if it weren't for online classes, I wouldn't have been able to manage my schedule that well. But at the same time, I said I didn't raise my hand to the question about taking only online classes because so much of what I'm taking away from my college experience is really rooted in the interpersonal development and the connections that I've made in my classrooms, outside of the classroom, and I think those things, for me at least, have been equal, if not more important than certain things that I've learned on a curricular level.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you very much. And so what we're going to be doing now is we're going to have a series of presenter panels, and I'd like the first one to come up and I'll describe what's happening. We have Joseph Moreau, Vice Chancellor of Technology from Foothill De Anza College. They'll be taking their place over here. Let me move this out of the way. And then also Ashley Skylar, who's coming up, Director of Innovation and Excellence in Online Education at Cal State Online. Keith Williams, the Interim Director of Online Education at the University of California, and Ruth Valoria, the Executive Dean from the School of Business at University of Phoenix. So I ask each of you to come up and take your place. What we're going to be doing is we're going to, the speakers are really going to set the context for the discussion with the students. So the students are going to be reacting to, asking questions, and commenting on each of these topics. So this first one, we want to get an update on what these systems are actually working on. And so basically, we're asking them the questions. Give an overview of what your system's current online efforts are. What do you take into consideration as you're figuring out which courses and what programs to offer? And then also some commentary on who the target students are. So we're going to give each of the speakers about 5 minutes. I'll try to keep you to that, 5 minutes or less to present. And then we're going to open it up so that the student panel can actually ask questions and make comments on the same topic. So with that in mind, I'd like to start off and hand it over to Joe, if you can give an update.
Sure. Thank you, Phil. As Phil mentioned, I'm the Vice Chancellor of Technology for the Foothill De Anza Community College District. I also am the newly appointed or selected executive sponsor for the California Community Colleges Online Education Initiative, which was generously funded by the legislature and the governor this year, as Mr. Flores mentioned to you earlier. And we're very, very excited about where we're going to be able to take our programs with this new support. The California Community Colleges have been a real leader statewide and nationally in online education for almost 20 years now, since there really has been something that we would call online education. In the 2012-2013 academic year, our 112 colleges offered 41,246 distinct online sections to over 643,000 community college students throughout the system. So we're very, very proud of our ability to extend access to classes online to that extent. Amongst those many courses and sections, 56 of our colleges, about half, offer full online degree programs, degree and certificate programs in about 587 different disciplines. So we have a long tradition and history of expanding access through online education. I would say, in answer to your question about what is our criteria for which courses or which programs go online, I don't know that we have as a system any single criteria, but I think if you were to talk to our distance education coordinators at our individual campuses, you would probably find a consistent answer is we offer there are probably two philosophies of thought in what we offer online. What is of greatest need to students? In other words, what are the things that are most impacted, which are most difficult for students to get in their schedule? We offer those online. And we offer the things that are ideally suited to be offered online. As you talked about, Joe, in terms of some of the IT classes you've taken are ideally suited courses for online delivery. As part of the online education initiative program that we're undertaking, it started on December 1st of 2013. This is really an initiative in response to the request from the legislature and the governor to better coordinate our initiatives statewide. So we've got all of our colleges doing great things online, but not necessarily in a coordinated fashion. So we want to be able to bring the colleges together to work more collaboratively and cooperatively to make sure that we really are truly addressing the needs of students and employers and families in terms of how we provide online instruction. We will be focusing primarily on the associate degree for transfer. The governor has said we need to respond to the requirements of our business partners throughout the state, and we need to produce 1 million more degreed individuals in the state of California by 2020. And the governor, I think, has very wisely identified the community colleges as one of the most cost-effective and time-effective paths to transfer for bachelor degree programs so we can get those folks into the workforce. So what we'll be looking at is those associate degree for transfer programs that are most desired by students, working with faculty at our individual colleges to develop and expand the capacity for offering courses that support those associate degree transfer programs, and expanding system-wide capacity to support those programs in terms of faculty professional development, advising and counseling, library services, other kinds of support services. I think the other big focus for us in this project will be to remove the barriers that we often inadvertently put in front of students in terms of being able to access courses from all of the colleges in the state and bring those together effectively to complete the program of their choice in a timely manner. We are looking to develop an online environment that essentially constitutes a one-stop shop for students. So regardless of where you may be taking courses, at your home campus or another campus, all of your courses, all of your educational planning materials, all of your support systems will be in one place with a single sign-on, and we're very excited about the opportunities that. And then finally, our online education initiative is working very closely with two other separately funded grant projects, statewide educational planning initiative for California community college students, as well as statewide common assessment for English, math, and ESL for community college students. So our desire is to bring all of those together in a unified environment and really streamline the process for students to move through the associate degree for transfer and then and move on to our one of our CSU, UC, or private school campuses in the state, or the nation for that matter.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Joe. And I know the program's just now starting, but it's going to be very interesting to see how it rolls out. I would assume you're sort of in a mode where you'll be as much listening today.
Absolutely. And that's really my primary motivation for being here today, is to be with this group of folks to hear what they need, what they want, what their expectations are, and how can we better meet those.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And Keith?
Sure. As Phil mentioned, I'm the interim director of online education at UC. That's a system-wide effort. I'm also a faculty member at Davis and have been there for 30-some years. UC has had online courses for many years, but at a much smaller scale than what was just described for the community colleges. The evolution that has gone on in the last couple of years is very encouraging. The faculty are very committed to the things that they do, and that has been to provide as good an education as possible for students, and their vision maybe hasn't been as accepting of online courses in the past, but has gone through a lot of changes over the last few years, and I think is getting much more available and much more readily endorsed by the faculty. And we've had a pretty huge turnaround in that capacity, which is, I think, real positive. UC has a variety of things that are going on, some of which have been stimulated by the funding that the governor proposed a year ago, some of which were already underway. Campuses each have their own efforts toward online education, and they've developed a number of courses that have been offered for many years. Right now, there are no undergraduate degrees possible at UC that can be fully online. There are some master's level programs, and particularly at the professional level and the graduate student level, there's going to be fairly large growth there. The faculty right now don't believe that a fully online degree is what's ready for UC at this time. Whether that will evolve or how it will evolve, we'll see, but they really believe in the education that has been provided and maintaining at least a part of that as we go forward. UC is a system of 10 campuses, but it's also 10 independent campuses that operate fairly independently. Every campus has its own registration enrollment system, its own learning management systems, and there's been relatively little coordination throughout the system previously toward things that might enable online education. And that's one of the areas that we've made a lot of efforts at over the last few years, and particularly in the last year with the stimulus from the interest from the government. We now, starting a week and a half ago, for the first time, have been able to enroll students into courses offered from other campuses electronically. There's a central website where students can go and see the courses that are available online, and if they choose to enroll, can click a button and it takes them to a place where they can use their home campus authentication to allow them to enroll in the course. And then in the background, everything goes on to make sure that both campuses involved are notified of the student enrollment, that grades eventually get back to where the student was. And it really has been a major accomplishment to get that done. We started efforts last spring and had to put in a lot of new things to enable that to happen, have had to change the culture both at the administrative level and at the faculty level that has been willing to help this along. And I think it's now headed real well in the right direction. At the same time, the number of courses that are available are nowhere near what was just described for community colleges. It's been fairly small. And we have initiatives that are starting to build more courses, targeting lower division, high enrollment gateway courses, the kind that have waiting lists that prevent students from getting something when they might need it to go through a regular curriculum pathway. And we've had in the past year, starting with some meetings in the spring where we had all campus involvement, we had more than 200 people attend some conferences that tried to lay the groundwork for how UC would do this. And eventually that led to a request for proposals to faculty that just finished up in December, where we now have, out of a number of applications that were put in, there are going to be 37 new courses that are developed that are getting funding from the initiative that came from the governor's office, and will probably become online in 2014-15. We also have a number of courses that the program that I oversee, UC Online Education, has developed in the last several years that are the ones that just started enrolling students a little over a week ago. This is kind of a pilot test where we're learning things that we need to know to do this at a larger scale. We have plans to expand the offerings that we have, as well as the new courses that come forward. And over the next year and a half, we'll be increasing that enrollment, but also developing a more robust system that will pretty much make it transparent for students when they want to enroll in an online course. They'll be able to do it as easily into a campus that's in Southern California and they're in the north as it would be to enroll on their campus into those. So it's a good beginning. We have a long ways to go, but we think that we're on the right track, and it's been helped by a lot of the different things that have brought online education to the forefront.
All right. Thank you very much, Keith. And Ashley?
Okay, my name is Dr. Schuyler. I was previously a faculty member for 9 years at Cal State Northridge, and in the last couple of years, I've been working with the California State University system to support fully online programs for the system. And I just want to point out that historically, we really have been very successful nationally providing fully online programs. So we have approximately about 104 fully online programs for this system. About 2/3 of them have been at the graduate level. So certainly efforts are underway to increase degree completion opportunities for those students. Additionally, we've also had about 65,000 students take an online course in 2012, nowhere near the community colleges. And we also have about 3,200 fully online courses across the systems. I didn't attempt to count the sections, although I'd like to think it's much higher than that. But so we really have been already doing a lot of efforts towards that. I think there's certainly a lot of similarities in just listening to both of you, what we're all doing as we look to improve the different systems working together to improve, articulation agreements, improve students being able to search, in one central place for all of those. So certainly a lot of efforts more recently with, certainly the governor's funding. Additionally, Chancellor White had also added $7.2 million to that initiative to increase the degree completion for graduate students to get them to a faster path for graduation. So in those efforts in the past spring and fall, there was a lot of research done to identify those bottleneck courses. So a lot of surveying across the system in the late spring, identifying those bottleneck courses, which are a kind of a stop out or for those students. So once those were identified, then there was a launch of an RFP late spring for identifying campuses to submit an RFP for successful course redesign, as well as promising. So in the successful course redesign, those campuses were funded to bring together, providing faculty to work together and put out something called an e-academy. So we actually had these academies where faculty came together across the CSUs. In this past fall, there were 6 of those, 175 faculty. So that's been a really strong effort to really identify those STEM classes, liberal arts, and better prepare the faculty, to increase those offerings. As well as e-advising, that's been a big target area as well for us, is to improve those degree maps and facilitate that for those students. So there's about 6 cohorts of different ideas around e-advising, increasing virtual labs. So there's really a lot of efforts that we're doing. You can also do a search of any online degree program. By 2015, we're really looking to be able to provide that central area where students across the whole CSU system can identify online courses. Currently with the, we call it Course Match, this past fall and spring, about 100 courses. It's kind of a proof of concept, but your student is able to enroll across any CSU and another CSU's course. And, you know, the articulation agreements and that process, I mean, all that has to be really mapped out for the student. But certainly by 2015, being able to offer about 3,200 of those is a rich number, but we're really targeting for that because it's really important for the system.
And just a quick thing, Rich, that's the program you said you took a course in. You did the course match where you took it online, or you did, Devon? Okay.
I got to experience that, so I'm excited to see that keep going, and I really enjoyed my time with it, and I hope that keeps going forward.
Okay, great.
And what's exciting is those courses were all already identified as successful fully online courses. So the purpose of the e-academies is really to get other faculty to adopt or replicate or refine that model across the different CSUs. So we're really looking to have those successful ones replicated across the system. And then a newer initiative that we started about a year ago is reaching out to stopped-out students that have 80 or more units, 40 of which in the CSU. So it's really important. 16 of the 23 are impacted for freshmen, 14 of the 23 impacted for transfer. We know certainly a lot of our students just can't get back in. So reaching out to those ones that have challenges getting back in, we're within Cal State Online also providing opportunities to get back in as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Ashley. And since Joe started off with some big numbers, I'm going to hand it over to Ruth, who might have the chance of story topping even.
Thank you. I don't know if I have all of the facts and figures that would perhaps top those facts and figures, but I just wanted to take a minute just to describe the University of Phoenix for those of you maybe a little bit less familiar, because we are sort of a nationwide institution, not just here in California. And our mission is that we are providing access to higher education opportunities, that we're enabling students to develop the knowledge, the skills that they need to contribute professionally and in their community and in society. So if you look at data which is provided by IPEDS, what you'll see about University of Phoenix students is relative, and this is data from 2010, relative to the national statistics, while there are 13% of African Americans in higher ed across the country, we have 18% at the University of Phoenix. And while the Hispanic total is 11% nationally, we're a little bit under that. We're about 8% at University of Phoenix. 56% of higher ed students are white in America. Only 36% of those at University of Phoenix are. And so in that 2010-2011 period, actually, we graduated more degrees. We sent out students with full degrees from the University of Phoenix to minorities than any other institution actually in the country. So in terms of access and expanding access, certainly we have found that the minority populations have been very successful in taking advantage of that access at the University of Phoenix. We have about 300,000 or so active students in degree programs. We offer from associates all the way through to doctoral in about 8 specific schools and colleges, mostly in disciplines that are very strongly related to a business outcome, like our IS&T programs, the business school, the College of Education, the College of Nursing. So we have some fairly specific career-oriented programs, and our focus is very much on student success and preparing students to be successful in their communities. So why did a student choose to go to the University of Phoenix? Mostly what we learn is it's about the convenience and the flexibility, because the students themselves have the choice to take the courses on a ground campus, which our ground campuses might look a little bit different than your ground campuses, but they are places where a faculty member will meet with about 15 students once a week for a few hours to talk about the educational topic. Or the vast majority, like Joe here, would have taken their entire program in an online format. So that flexibility of being able to catch up with the discussion questions, to do the homework when they can, after the kids are in bed. The vast majority of our students would be working full-time and would also be studying full-time, as Joe has alluded to here. So the flexibility and convenience is absolutely paramount to them. And we spend a lot of time talking to students, listening to them about what they like and don't like about our programs. We have a Net Promoter Score system that asks, would they recommend the University of Phoenix? And what we hear is great about that is this flexibility and convenience. But of course, satisfaction is not a guarantee of completion. You can be super happy in a college but not be doing well. So we spend a lot of time thinking about what are the barriers to completion, and we use the types of techniques that for-profit companies use when attacking a problem like that, which is you think about segments of students and segmenting out the different barriers that students have. And so what we've learned about the barriers, of course, the financial one is very important, it's probably top of the list. And we're very focused on that. We do a lot of help with our financial aid counselors to make students aware of the resources that they have. So these support systems outside of the classroom for motivation, for career connection, all of those things are actually just as important in an online setting as the things that are happening in the classroom itself. And so I know you're going to talk about those support systems in another session, but it's very important to note that when you open up access to education, open it up through the online modality, the responsibility is very much on your shoulders to provide these services to students as part of what increases success. We have very small class sizes in our online programs. We have a lot of virtual workshops, 24/7 math tutoring that's available, because we know math can be a problem class online. That came up earlier. And we have a full range of predictive analytic capabilities, both from alerts that go to our counselors to notice that students may be having attendance issues, all the way through to our fully adaptive learning Carnegie Math product, which is at the very high end of adaptive techniques in teaching math online. So not just do we make everything available online and that increases access, but also the support services that surround it really help to contribute to the success of our students.
And I'd actually like to pick up on some of the comments you made about the student population. So not just in terms of racial makeup, but if you had to describe like attributes, and I'd like to get the others involved, what types of students are you either targeting because you have a new program, or what type of students do you think will benefit from your online program? So I'd like to get some comments on that. Ashley, or should I go?
As a faculty member, I did a lot of research across our system. I identified, surveyed all of our students, and you really have to be an astute, independent learner, very motivated. Typically, it can be a little more challenging for freshmen, so maybe more, more of a sophomore through junior.
Yeah. It's almost more of a more mature,
you
more
do need to
prepared,
have
self-sufficient.
some maturity level in there.
Yeah. Any comments? And then I'd like to turn it to the students.
We generally find that the majority of our online students are also taking on ground classes. They've selected the online delivery mode so they can time shift their class into a time of day or a day of the week that's convenient for them because they have family obligations or job obligations or other commitments outside of school, so that they're using this as a way to really do time management, schedule management, and that seems to work pretty effectively for a lot of them.
I think there are two areas that we've tried to emphasize. One is allowing students to get courses when they need them. So if they're blocked off because of seat limitations somewhere, there can be alternatives to do it. And the other is to give students more flexibility in their schedule so that they have commitments that require them to work during part of the day and they can't take courses that are available. There are some that they can now get into, and that will help them get through their degree in a more timely manner.
Okay, great. And so with that, now this is the real purpose of each of the panels. I'd like to turn it over to Isa and the students to get your reactions to what you're hearing, questions that you have for them, or just commentary in general.
For you guys, but first I'd love to just hear, what are your initial thoughts? What's in your head right now after what you just heard? And how does it relate to your experience?
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Miss Veloria, I am interested, and I applaud the University of Phoenix's efforts to enhance the admissions of underrepresented students on the campus or at the university. I'm wondering what type of support systems that derive from social interaction does the University of Phoenix provide, or is it attempting to replicate those kinds of interactions? Because as I mentioned previously, I was a first person to go to college, Latina, from a predominantly Latino community. And I found that at UCLA, a lot of my success was derived from my interaction with affinity organizations or other like clubs or organizations. And I'm wondering if there's a social outlet or portion to the University of Phoenix. And if so, you could just speak a little bit about how that is assisting students in their matriculation and success in graduation.
Yeah, I mean, we have yes, certainly. We do have, I think it's about 120 actual physical locations where there are campuses for University of Phoenix. And in those locations, there are places to do study groups with other students, there's places to interact with the counseling staff directly there. So even if you're an online student, you can go to a physical building. So that's just one important thing to note that people maybe not always remember about University of Phoenix. We do have ground locations. Secondly, we have an independently created social network for online communication, so building community online. At each of the local campuses has also chapters, whether they're academic chapters for topics or they could be socially oriented chapters. And there's a lot of community involvement, whether it's Habitat for Humanity, helping out building homes in the community, several community projects that would get started by those local ground campuses that people can be involved in. So, I mean, there are definitely opportunities for that social connection, but we do also have a lot of students who are very involved with their work and their family, and therefore that has not been such an important component. Most of our students are over the age of 25. Again, mostly, they're later on in their careers, and balancing the social side and all this isn't perhaps part of the formula that they're looking for University of Phoenix, but there are certainly opportunities to do that. Thank you.
I have a comment. For the CSU system, it was said that the online courses were mostly going to be aimed towards sophomores through seniors. I was wondering why leave out the freshmen? I took a class when I was a freshman, and part of it was online, and I did notice that a lot of to get through the class was because I didn't know how to work it, and that added the frustration when I did actually get to the work. I was already frustrated, so actually getting through the work just was a nightmare. So, I was wondering if there's any chance or any thoughts in just implementing something prior to engaging in an online course, something of how to navigate through the system prior to actually taking the course. That way, it's not only limited to those that beginning at the sophomore level, but also for the freshmen that may have those obligations of working and taking the online course.
I just want to kind of add to that. So in the study that I did at Northridge, we just found that they typically were more sophomore, but certainly across the CSU, there's a lot of freshmen that are successful and take the online courses, and most of our CSUs have a lot of online tutorials. For example, at Northridge, we actually included an online readiness in like the freshman seminar class where they actually learned about learner characteristics and their technology readiness. And I'm seeing that across the system. A lot of the campuses do something similar where they'll incorporate it in an intro class so they can explore that. And then there are a lot of online tutorials. There's 24/7 tech support, and there's there's online tutoring for a lot of the academic subjects as well as on-campus tutoring. So there's really a lot of supports there even for the freshmen. I've seen several of the campuses have laptop checkouts where they can go and check out actual technology if that's if they don't have access. So there's a lot of great successful projects out there in support for freshmen.
Millennial expert. Yeah, my mic's not on. And he says, a lot of people assume, there we go, that millennials are tech savvy, but he said really they're tech dependent, and those are two very different things. So I'd love to hear from you guys, sort of how tech savvy were you before taking an online class, and what helped or didn't help you as you tried to navigate just the online platform and getting started?
Well, I'd like to comment on that. When I first started at the University of Phoenix, I had about 8 years of IT experience under my belt, so that definitely, I think, played a role in my success. online videos that, wouldn't play, I knew that I had to, update my Adobe, Flash Player or, technical things like that. I was able to do very quickly. So I think having that IT background definitely helped me out, So.
In my own experience, So in my own experience, I was fairly tech savvy by the time I was in high school. From the first computer we got in like 1995, I believe. I really spent a lot of time on it. I really knew what was going on the software side. But everybody starts somewhere. I started from a really old 95 computer. I think anybody can really pick up an online class and gain those skills as they move on. So that's my story on that.
Any of you not tech savvy when you started online? Tell us about that.
I was not tech savvy when I was in undergrad, probably because I didn't own a computer until about the 12th grade in high school, and the computer that I did have was a makeshift computer that somebody made in the basement or something, and we had dial-up internet, so I was very not tech savvy. I am still not tech savvy, and so I think it's difficult to project the idea that millennials are going to right ahead and pick up online education and just run with it and become experts with the computer. I still ask my older brother, who is 10 years my senior, arguably should be less tech savvy than I am, when I need to upload my computer. I was like, what is this thing that's telling me to upload the Adobe? Is that what it is? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't even know how to convert PDFs to like Word documents. It's rough, right? I know briefs. I know how to do that. But I would say that it's very difficult. Hard to do. Yeah. But we're getting through. I think it's difficult just to even immerse yourself in a hybrid course to really understand how to navigate websites and how to access webinars or group chats or I do think that it's a little bit difficult, and my recommendation would be to actually have an introduction to online education course requirement maybe prior to maybe like a little training, like a 2-hour training, a 1-day training, a 1-week training. I don't know what the training is going to look like. I would probably train on it too. So that's a recommendation.
Is that, I actually just wouldn't mind getting, is that, do other students have the same impression that sort of an intro course would be important for success in this regard?
That'd be wonderful.
I would say, I think that's a very good idea. I've never heard anyone say that. That's like, very, like, that's good. And I think even if you just, when you sign up for a class, one of the requirements before you start is like you have to do a tutorial before you start. So you kind of learn. I think that even that would be innovative in itself. So I like that point that was made.
Okay, super quick. I just wanted to throw out there, I was talking to one of the Community College Academic Senate executives earlier, who's here, John, back there, about this whole push in the community college system for a 60-unit degree. And I know that's kind of translated a little bit legislatively to the CSU, where they're saying, produce a bachelor's degree for $10,000 and 2 cents or whatever. But I think that's a conflicting idea with this thought that we should be teaching people how to learn, which I really agree with, but as we're talking about kind of the policy direction and how to shape online ed, we do need to keep in mind that those are really combative ideas. They don't really work together very well.
And Keith, I know you had a point?
I think this conversation is something that all of us have had to address on our campuses and systems too, that we have to provide student support and tech support and learning support, and not only to students, often to faculty as well, who are very enthusiastic, have some background, but also need to learn more about how to teach effectively online as well.
And we still have time if you have some more questions. Yes.
For me, the only thing that didn't work for me when I took my online courses was when it came to like group assignments. We had to meet with a group of students that you probably never have met before. And so sometimes when you would go to try to complete your assignments, you find yourself basically have to almost doing the assignment yourself because people wasn't stepping up to the plate to complete their task. Or sometimes they would never even show up. So sometimes I was traveling away from Sylmore just to go meet with my group, and then people wouldn't even show up. You would call them and ask them where they are. You would send them emails, and people wouldn't show up. So it was pretty much, if you didn't get the job done or if you didn't get the assignment done, you were going to fail that class. And so I was the type of person, I wasn't going to fail my class. So I would just take on, whatever the next student had to do. So that was probably my only challenge when I was taking my online courses, was dealing with the groups.
Suggestions for sort of how group assignments could work better?
At the time when I took online courses, they didn't really have a lot of like tutors and things like that, or the teachers wasn't like on board of everything. So I think just the teachers, like I think the lady said, with them monitoring, when the students are attending, or they're lacking, not turning their assignments and stuff, and so that they can, because I didn't get an email for one class all the way to the end saying, oh, you're doing kind of bad. And I'm like, you waited to the end of the year or the end of the semester to tell me that I'm doing bad? And I've been in this online class the whole entire time. So I think just, the teachers tapping into, students' lives a little bit more would help probably.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I had one other question from my perspective. The 3 California public systems all are coming up with programs where it seems like the availability of online courses, leveraging multiple campuses to give courses to students. So let me just put them on the spot. Does that matter to you guys? Is that an issue about having access to even the courses? Has that been a barrier in the past?
I would say for me, that was definitely a barrier. I'm in my last year of college, and when I was applying for courses for my fall semester, I realized that I forgot to take political science. It just slipped my mind. But since my schedule was already set with work and with my other courses, the concurrent enrollment ended up being a really big benefit because I was able to search for classes that just weren't available on my home campus, and I was able to take care of that. Got an A. It was great. So I definitely think that is something that it was a new program, and even just asking other students about it, there wasn't a whole lot of awareness about it on our campus. But I mean, with anything new, that's just how it is getting started. But it was definitely an added benefit, and I think that it could definitely grow into something even more beneficial in the future.
Right. Any other experience on having access to courses from your campus, just not having them available, or that they are available?
Yeah, I would have to agree with what Dwayne said, and also I think for me, as a student in the CSU, I just don't think I should be limited to what campus with the online course. That's why the online concurrent was really good, because me being a student at Cal Poly Pomona, I'm still paying the same fees to the CSU, so it was good for me to take a class at Cal State East Bay and to be able to see across all the whole system, what's being offered and what you can do, what you can work with it. It made it much more convenient, and it kind of just widened the experience and kind of the opportunity you get when you're a student. So that's why, again, I enjoyed the program.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'd like to thank our first panel for being here today. Okay, the next panel we're going to be bringing up is going to focus on some of the conversation we had about academic and support services. And so basically, how can online offering support the needs of a diverse student population? So I'm going to be bringing up Cynthia Mosqueda, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, who's the first-year experience program at El Camino College. Bringing up Elaine Collins, who's a TUES, I'm not sure what that stands for, Central Resource Program at San Jose State University. And where I know her from is doing a lot of the research on the San Jose State pilot program and looking at student experience. And then also bringing up Patricia James Hunt from the just retired Dean of Distance Education at Mount San Jacinto College. So I'd like to bring them up, and really the topic we're going to be trying to get them to address is basically give an overview of any kind of pilot or program you're working on. In particular, think about who are the target student demographics and what helped make them successful. And getting more into the subject we brought up, what have you found out about the technology literacy of students? And I like the way that this was brought up about tech dependent versus tech savvy. So I'd like them to share their experiences there, and then get into saying what types of support do you actually think are needed to help students be successful in these courses, and any other kinds of outcomes that you can provide. So we're now that's what this panel is gonna do. We're gonna do the same format of having them present a roughly 5 minutes, and then open it up and get student commentary and questions on it. So with that in mind, do we have, let's see, where's Elaine? Oh, there you are. Okay. So we're going to start out with Cynthia. If you could start out and describe your experiences.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to start off by saying bravo to Cynthia, the other Cynthia Flores, for her honesty. I really appreciate that. Second of all, I don't know where Dean is in the room, but I think all conferences should be held like this, where practitioners and educators and researchers are on one side and students are over there validating what we say and correcting us if we're not telling the truth. So I just love this format. I run the Freshman Experience Program at El Camino College. I was just told yesterday at our Flex Development Day that I'm going to be celebrating my 15th anniversary there, which I cannot believe. But I've been running our Freshman Experience Program there, and we serve about 700 new college freshmen every year that are coming directly from high school. El Camino is a very diverse campus across all areas of ethnicity, economic lines, and a couple of lessons I think that I've learned over the years in running the Freshman Experience Program is I think the biggest barrier is definitely, I can see the differences among economic lines for our students who come in. I see, students who come in, and that's why I loved your honesty about not being able to use PDF. I have students who come in who are really tech savvy. They have great computer skills, and they do very well in a lot of the classes, especially online education. But I've also found that a lot of those students have had a previous experience coming from the K-12 schools and feeder districts that are coming into El Camino College. I think that one of the things we can do if we want to try to improve the amount of students that participate online is to really expose more students in K-12 when they feed in to the community college sector. I also think that a couple of things that I have seen with my students is that I really see a difference in terms of my students who are scoring at basic skills and developmental. There are a lot of my students who are scoring at basic skills developmental and who are first generation students don't always have the access to computers in their home. If you were to walk on our campus right now at El Camino College, we have about maybe 5 to 6 computer labs, and every one of those computer labs is always full to capacity. And a lot of those students, especially where I'm at, I have my own center, I have computers in my center, they're always full, and I always talk to my students, do you not have a computer at home? And many of my students say, I don't have access to technology at my house. The only time I can use a computer is here. And a lot of times I'll have students who come to me and tell me that they enrolled in a course that's not necessarily a distance education course, but that there is a component of that course that's online that they didn't know about. And they come running to me and say, can I drop this course? Because there's no way I'm going to be able to keep up with the assignments because 50% of it is online. And so I think that that's something else that I don't think we've heard here today. We offer a lot of different services for students who take courses online. I mean, we have online orientation, which I actually helped design when I was hired in 2000 for students who were taking courses. We have online counseling, and we do even have a course on how to take a class online. Because I think that this expectation that somehow I have a lot of students who come to me who are trying to get these courses done, and they enroll in online courses, and they don't know the amount of time and commitment that they need to put in to do well and to be successful. So somebody, I think in the last panel, I think it was the representative from University of Phoenix, talked about that somebody talked about the maturity level. And there is definitely a maturity level that you need to do well on these online classes. But in terms of our program and the type of support, I think that we're doing a better job, but I definitely think that community colleges need to be a little bit more responsive and really assess the level of computer proficiency that the student has, as well as how do they go about researching different types of information. We offer a library skills class. It's a 1-unit class at El Camino that really teaches our students how to navigate databases, how to look up information that students find very helpful. So I think we're trying to do our part, but I definitely think that there's still a huge gap that's missing in terms of support services for students who want to take these type of classes online. So I'll stop there real quick and then you continue.
And actually, one quick question I have on this is like, what is the mix of using this technology proficiency as let's provide the training, the introductory course so that everybody can be successful versus almost self-selection of saying, would you be a good match within an online course? So what is the mix that you look at of training versus determining whether they can succeed?
Well, in our program, I run the freshman experience there, and we have about 700 new students that participate in there. And one of the things that we've done just within our program is we provide students with a self-assessment survey of, where they feel they're at in terms of, computer skills and literacy and the areas that they need to improve on. And for us, we've taken it upon ourselves to include that as part of our orientation and kind of mandate it for students that if they don't have any kind of computer skills coming in, that they enroll in a course, that they attend a workshop, that they do something to address that, because the courses that they're going to be taking out at our campus at least, many of the courses, 70% of the courses, doesn't matter if you're actually enrolled in an online course, they are going to be utilizing technology. I mean, I'm just thinking, one of our professors is here today, Pete Marcoux, who will be on a panel in a minute. Our basic skills reading course has a lot of online lesson planning that goes on that students have to be able to access. And a lot of the students who are scoring in at basic skills who come to me and they say, this is going to be really difficult, I need help. So we have to address that. We can't ignore that. And I think that, this is great this is happening in my program. But that's just a small fraction of the student population. We have 26,000 plus students who are coming to the college, and I know that a lot of them experience the same types of problems and have the same similar issues.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And Elaine, if you can describe your program and research that you've done.
Okay, so I'm Elaine Collins. I'm the Associate Dean of the College of Science at San Jose State University, and before that I was a professor of chemistry. And the Tuesday, TUES, stands for Transforming Undergraduate Education in STEM. So that's a division of NSF, and they awarded San Jose State a very small grant to study our pilot program with a for-profit MOOC provider to offer 3 courses last spring. I do have slides.
Yeah, I think if you hit
that. Oh, that's why I have this. Okay. So we in our pilot program, we offered 3 courses. So the courses themselves were not MOOCs, but they were offered through the MOOC platform, and then the Udacity commercial provider added extra services to the San Jose State version of the courses, and the students could receive university credit for taking the courses. The 3 courses were developmental math, which as we all know, students coming to college needing remediation in math and English is a huge time sink and cost, and delays graduation and prevents graduation. So anything we can do to help that problem would be good. And the other 2 classes were entry-level, college-level math classes, college algebra, and statistics. The pilot was designed for 50 San Jose State matriculated students and 50 people from the community. Just for the developmental math class, as the senator mentioned earlier, Cal State's been very hard hit by the budget problems in California, and in 2009, San Jose State was very impacted and didn't have funds to provide courses and had to limit the number of students we could accept. And so when students come to San Jose State needing remediation either in English or math, they have a year to complete that. Math 6L is a 1-semester remediation course in math. And starting in 2009, that class was only offered in the fall. So any student that did not pass that class in the fall would then have to take that course at a community college or another Cal State before they could come back to San Jose State. So one of the courses we had in the pilot was a spring semester online version of that course. So the students that were in that class that were from the San Jose State students were students that had not passed that class the first semester they took it. So this was going to be their only opportunity to take it at San Jose State. And so the Senator also mentioned some of the not so good statistics in the pass rates for the courses. There's various, partly most of the students from San Jose State, 46% were underrepresented minorities. It's a little hard to know the exact number for the non-San Jose State students because that was not something that they put down when they signed up for the classes. We found that out through our study, through surveys, and we didn't get 100% participation. One thing that we did that I'm mostly going to talk about is we partnered with a charter high school in the Bay Area that's mostly underrepresented minorities. Mostly the students at that school qualify for free lunch, so very economically disadvantaged also. And so we had 213 students that signed up for these 3 courses. 98 were San Jose State students, 115 were other students. 44 of those other students were from this high school. 8 of them took the developmental math class, 24 took the college algebra, 12 took the stat class.
And did you, just checking, did you want the other slide up?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So out of those 44 high school students, only 4 of the students actually got a C or better in any of the classes. And as the researcher, what we were studying was how aware the students were of what services were available on the site for help for them. What kind of tech savvy or tech experience did they have before they took the course? Questions like that. We administered the first survey about 3 weeks into the semester, and we found out that very few of the students had ever taken an online class before. Most of the students were unaware of any of the extra services that were offered through the course. And so the partner Udacity made a big effort to develop little videos to introduce some of the support services, and they had some mentors that gave 24/7, were available 24/7 for online help, and they actually made phone calls to all of the people in the course that did not, hadn't really progressed in the course. And most of the high school students, maybe they had a computer at home, but maybe it was a shared computer, so they didn't get very much time on it. Maybe they didn't have high-speed internet. At the school itself, they were only providing an hour a day where the students had access to computers and doing the class. So I'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, can we go to the next slide? It might
Yeah.
help to manually advance it.
So what the high school did during the course of the semester to adapt to this, and they've actually used the online version of several other Udacity courses in their high school. They opened their computer lab from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week and had a facilitator in the computer lab. The facilitator spent a lot of time learning all the 3 courses and what things were available to the students, and worked with the students in small groups where they were all on the same page on the computer page going through the lessons so that they could know that all the students actually knew how to use all of the tools. Some of the courses did not have a lot of pacing within specific timelines for things. So the courses that had more definite due dates for things, the students got through them better. One of the things the high school students tended to do was that they really liked the videos, and some of them would watch the videos like 25 times, and so then they didn't progress through the class. That was another thing, especially the high school students were not aware of the time commitment to take the class, the speed that you had to go, and the amount of material that you cover in a college level class. And so but because these were initiated during the middle of the semester, or as the course went along, it wasn't enough for the students to meet the endpoint, which was the only thing we really measured, was did they get a C or better in the class. And so if we'd had more time and more money, it would have been good to see what they knew before they started and what they knew at the end, and it would be great to get more money to study how this model works better.
Yeah,
especially
that's
for
a
high
note for the National Science Foundation if they're listening for the follow-up study that would. And I would point out this is an area that I think is important, is we don't have enough research on what's actually working in online education. And I would definitely, anybody who hasn't read it yet, I highly recommend reading Elaine and her team's report. But as you point out, we need a lot more data, particularly before and after type of research. So thank you very much, and I'm sure we're going to hear more from you. And I'd like to turn it over to Pat.
Hi. I first want to start by qualifying that I was a community college student as well, and I can relate to a lot of what you've gone through. My parents did not go to school. My mother told me when I was a junior in high school and I was trying to find a place to go to school that I was not college material. And that's pretty hard to hear, you know, and she was really just trying to protect me. And she didn't understand school. My dad didn't graduate from high school. So I came from that environment. And so what I did was I got married and had 2 kids. And then I was divorced. And so I had to do something. And I went to California. I went to the California Community Colleges at CCSF, took 1 class, passed it with an A, and I thought, boy, either I'm really smart or they're really dumb. But I owe my life to the California Community Colleges. I graduated from Kenyatta College. I went to UC, and I did my master's fully online. And by doing that, I doubled my pay within about 5 minutes after I completed the degree. And if it hadn't been online, I would not have been able to do it. But there's a huge difference between being a graduate student online and being a community college student online. And so, yeah, and thank you. So we have the same thing that Cynthia has going on at her school, and I think our community colleges do a good job of really providing those support services. We're learning about them all the time. We've just instituted SI, supplemental instruction, which really is great in our face-to-face and has done great things for those, into our online program, and we'll hopefully have information about that as we're piloting right now. Really excited about doing that. But we also really put energy into 2 other areas, and one of them is training our faculty. We've had an academy at our college for 13 years. It happens 3 days a week for twice during the school year. We had 300 faculty this week, Anna's sitting over there, for 3 days, and they're learning how to teach online. It wasn't the technology, it wasn't the materials, it wasn't the classroom that made me an effective learner, it was the teacher. And so it's really important to us that our teachers understand that that interaction is critical in the online class, that they're there for students. That when in the discussion forum, a student asks a desperate question with the subject line, help, that you're in there every day answering that question and you don't leave them hanging. So we focus on that and course design. The course design should be transparent. It shouldn't be in the way of the learning. And I'd like you to kind of address course design as an answer to some question about what do you think about that, and what was effective course design and what you saw in your classes, because we're really about making sure that that course is easy for students to get through and you're really not stumbling over anything. You know what to do, you know where to go, and all of that. The third thing we focus on is innovation. And I think we have to keep looking at what can we do to improve what's going on in our online classes and our experience for students. We did a MOOC through Coursera, funded by the Gates Foundation, and it was a perfect storm. Our California economics were tanking, and we were cutting basic skills classes at our college right and left because the focus was on the transfer degrees. What were we going to do? And we were having conversations with Coursera about could we offer something that would be a resource for students. So if you didn't place into college level English, you could take this class while you're waiting to take another placement test or waiting to get into an English class that would help you write better. And what we found, we had 45,000 enrolled in the first section, and in the second, about the same amount. About 30,000 were participants, so that's a little bit different. They enroll, but maybe they participate or not. We had 2,700 in each session that completed. It doesn't sound like a lot, but 2,700, how long would it take you to teach 2,700 students something? And they could take their certificate back to our college, and we let other colleges choose to do that or not, and reassess right away, and we didn't charge them for it. And while we're still looking at that data, we're going into our third session, February 7th. It's a basic writing class on Coursera called Crafting an Effective Writer. The students that did come back and reassess, there were only a handful, probably about 15, all assessed higher. So they skipped at least one and some two of the basic skills courses and went right on. So I think, if we're looking at what our mission is, we help students become students, college students at the community college. We accept 100% of the applicants, so top 100%. So we teach them to be college students, and that's really an important thing. We nurture them, so our teachers and what they do are really important, and we're really out there in innovation, and I think that's really important too.
Good.
So my question to you is, what does course design mean to you, and how has that helped you?
For me, course design, because I've taken a good number of online courses, and I've seen a lot of just that default, like here's the question of the week, post your response and respond to your classmates, and that's like your assignment for the week. And for me, I don't feel like that really promotes I guess that doesn't really promote what on paper that kind of work is set out to promote, which is, exchanging between your colleagues, thoughtful, really like thoughtful interpretation of the material. It's for me, and I know for a lot of students who have been in that mentality like I have of, if with that design, I feel like that's just the easy A online course design. And it's something that it's easy to keep up with. Just set your alarm to that Sunday evening. I'm saying it because I've done it. Just Sunday evening and just get it done. But I have also had courses that really build in more interactive elements. I took an Afro-American Studies course last year that was really powerful. We would have a video to watch every week that was longer than just 7-8 minutes. But it was something that really put things into context for us and I feel like I did a lot to make up for not being in a classroom environment. And I think that's really important. And what you said about the instructor always having really that key role to what the student is going to learn and walk away from with that course, I think that is absolutely true. Just because it's online and you're not always face-to-face with the instructor doesn't mean that relationship isn't still important. And I mean, we're students, and we can tell when an instructor is just trying to coast through this course and do that bare minimum, and not really giving us that wholehearted learning experience. So I think I'm glad you brought up course design, because I think that's where the root of support for online courses and online education really starts. Is how is the course designed? Is it designed for students to be successful in it and to learn, which is what we're really here for.
Yep.
This session, as you guys know, is about academic support, which you guys brought up already a lot. And I think, Rich, you brought up a really good point as we talk about affordability and access, and yet support, right? Support is not cheap. And, I just read an article in The Atlantic talking about how Harvard students have almost 5 different mentors, from faculty, advisors, coaches, supporting them all through. And yet at some community colleges, it's as high as 1,500 students to 1 advisor. And so if the students at Harvard need that much support, how much more do the students who are struggling with a lot of other barriers that come just from low income and other things? So I'd love to hear from you guys, sort of, when did you feel really supported in your online classes? What worked? And when did you not feel that support was there? And in those situations, what suggestions can you give that could make that better as we move forward?
Personally, I always felt very, very supported by the instructors for my online courses. And that really goes into the course design question, because it depends on who designs the course. A lot of times professors have a lot of authority on that. And when they do, they can, if they're really good at their job and what they do, then they put a lot of insight into it, and they add a lot of practicality to the course. The courses I took involved going outside and going into one was an art course, so we got to go to a field trip to a museum. It was the Getty. The other was a marine biology course. We got to go behind the scenes at the aquarium of the Pacific. So there was a practical aspect to it. It really supplemented, in a sense, it supplements the classroom experience. So I think it really depends on how much authority is given to the person who is actually creating the course and what their view of education is. And going on that, I did have a question for you all. Access to computers was brought up. With the budget cuts that have been going on, well, for a very long time now, how easy or difficult has it been to provide access to students to technology? I've read a lot of wealthy institutions, often give their students computers, but I've never been given a computer in my life, and that'd be great. But at the same time, there have also been other programs like free rental computers for students on campuses and whatnot. So I just wanted to get some insight on that.
I think at El Camino, for the most part, it's still the access that students have to computers it's pretty much limited to computer labs throughout the campus, whether that's in the math building, humanities, or centers such as the one that I oversee, Freshman Experience Program. There are some classrooms on campus. For example, we run an accelerated math program, and the professors who teach in that program got together. They wrote a grant, and it was funded, I think it might have been through a Title V initiative. And so they now have iPads that the students can use, specifically, obviously, to do the math work, but they can certainly use it for other purposes as well. And we're hoping that will kind of start to spread into other areas. We also run an accelerated reading and writing program, and that's kind of what we're hoping to eventually do. But for the most part, I think we are pretty much limited to computer labs and to classrooms that are either have computer labs inside and as part of the instruction is integrated, or the iPads that I talked about.
Rich, can you tell us about some of the things maybe you felt unsupported or supported in your online experiences? I know you had some trouble. Was support part of that? And
Absolutely. So in my, my humanities class, this most recent one, I probably remember the most about that one. It was done, I don't even think that we used a kind of like Blackboard or any of those Moodle, those kind of housing, course management tools. We used a blog, and now I just totally, the most popular blog website, and I totally forgot what it's called. WordPress, oh my God, okay. We used WordPress, and all of your assignments you posted on your blog, be creative, do that stuff. And I think that one of the most challenging things for me in that class was engaging the medium with which I was supposed to connect with the class. WordPress to me felt like a very clunky way to publish my material for a lot of people to see that I didn't really feel comfortable with. And it's not a very personal thing, and so I was taking a social studies class, which I probably should have thought, oh, well, I might want to actually talk to people during my social studies class. And I didn't really get that aspect of the class, and so I felt like that environment didn't support me in the way that I should have connected with the class. And we talked a little bit before about what classes are most appropriate to take online or most effectively translated online. And to me, not having the class around me was kind of an unsupportive thing.
If you don't mind me jumping in real quick and putting you on the spot, Melody, you told us some interesting stories last night about how when you were in, this was early days, almost a decade ago, taking some online classes, and you had very difficult logistical options for support, and then you told us how it affected your grade. Can you relate that?
Well, at the time, it was really good because University of Phoenix, it was flexible, but it was actually a challenge because I was able to take online classes, a ground class, but I also had to take another class at a JC college because they didn't offer the online class online. So it was very limited classes that they had, so I had to double up on my classes. That was a good thing because I was able to graduate early, but the only bad thing was the fines was like double. So everything cost more, the books cost more, and at the end, I went all the way through school. Probably the last semester, that's when the financial aid lady called me in and said, well, the counselor called me in saying, oh, you didn't take a class. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to go back. And that's what made me actually start doubling up on my classes, was because they didn't let me know until close to the end that I still needed this one class. And I'm thinking, oh, why wasn't they monitoring, all my classes? Because I had went to so many different schools, but they didn't obtain all my transcripts. So I had to double up on some of my classes, which was a good thing.
But you had mentioned the Saturday support aspect.
Oh.
That's what I wanted to pull out.
Oh, yeah. So I took a class. I didn't know at the time. I thought when I took an online class that I can pretty much meet anytime. But this one particular class, they had a time frame that we had to go meet either with the students or with the teachers. And it was on a Saturday. So I would have to commute maybe 30, 40 minutes, back and forth on that Saturday just to meet with the class sometimes. So sometimes that was a challenge because either I had to work or I had my siblings with me. So sometimes that wasn't a convenience.
I have a question, and this is something that I've been thinking about for some time, especially as the conversations about online education kind of arise at the University of California. And I want to know, we talked a little bit about support for underrepresented, non-traditional students and what that could potentially look like. But I know that there's, at least for me, a question about maybe one or two or three, all three of you can talk a little bit about the support that's provided for differently abled students that want to access online courses, because I feel like that's something that's not often talked about amongst the circle of people are like, oh, it's a desirable alternative for those that choose to opt into the program. But what happens to those students that are differently abled that try to access online courses that may be visually impaired or hearing impaired or whatever it may be?
I think I can speak to that a little bit. One of the things that's really kind of lovely about the community colleges, and you guys are going to go, oh, really, is our Title V regulations. And we have regulations that say that our courses have to be accessible to all students. And it has to be done before the student goes into the class. Like if someone walks into a class and they're blind into your face-to-face class, you know that. But online, you don't know that. So in a face-to-face class, we'll accommodate that student when they come in. But in an online class, we have to accommodate that student before we even know they're there, because they don't have to declare we may not know they're there and we can't see them. So we work really hard towards making sure that all of the materials in our courses are accessible. It's a hard job. It's a hard thing to do. But we have some really good systems in place. We have the High Tech Center, which is located at the Foothill De Anza District. And Jamie, you should talk to Jamie back there sometime today because he's very involved in that. And we work really hard on campus as well. We have centers where students can go, and they can also call in and get help. So they don't have to come in to get that kind of help. They can call in, or they can email, or they can have someone contact for them, and we'll contact them to get them that kind of support. So we work really hard with our students that way in our system, and I don't know how CSU or UC has to deal with that, but that's what we do.
Elaine?
We have similar things in place at San Jose State.
El Camino does a really good job as well. We have a special resource center where students can come and register and get access to all the services.
Yeah. There's one other thing we have too, and I see people out here that I have to mention, is we have a grant from the Chancellor's Office. It's the DECT grant, and what it allows us to do is to get all our videos captioned. If they're going to be online, we can send them out and get them captioned. We don't have to pay for that. The state pays for that. So that's really important too.
One thing I would just add,
DECT, D-E-C-T.
One thing I would just, as she asked the question, all of the answers came back a little bit about support centers, like come get support from us. But we also started out with course design. So what's the element of course design to enable differently abled students to succeed?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. When we're talking about the course design, we have to make sure that everything's accessible, but we're also looking at the design of the course so it's as simple as possible to get into and get started. And we talk to our teachers because we do a lot of training. We have the @ONE project that does training for faculty, and one of the things that we try to get them to do is to understand how a student comes to a class. They come to a class, maybe not, every course is different, every teacher's different, just like a face-to-face class. So when they walk into an online class, the interface they're looking at may also be different. So we try to talk to teachers about, and I'd like to know if this sounds like it works for you, about if the first week of a class you didn't have to buy a book. But if in the first week or maybe 2 weeks of a class, you had resources online, no books needed to take that the first couple of weeks. And in the first couple of weeks, you eased into how the projects progressed in their complexity. Not their rigor, but their complexity as far as how you got into them. Would that be helpful? Because that's what we're trying to do. Would that be helpful? Can you speak to books? Can you speak to the resources that you have to buy and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bringing that up, I feel like that is something that can be really beneficial just for courses in general, because I know I myself, and I'm sure a lot of other students have invested money and paid for books that ended up collecting dust throughout the time in the course. So whether online resources are able to, obviously the goal is to have online resources for free for the duration of the course, but even if it is just for the first couple of weeks to see if the course is for me or whoever the student is, I think that would definitely lend itself to more success.
We're also working on open education resources for online as much as possible and pushing those too, which are free.
Yep, good. Cynthia, you had a question for the students?
Yeah, I was just curious. Did any of you, when you were taking your online courses, did you ever take an online course that wasn't considered a college level course? That was, because you talked about, I think, African American Studies, but did anybody ever take developmental English course, reading course, or math course? It was all college level. And had you already been at that campus for more than a semester? Or did you take an online course like your first semester there? Your first semester?
No. And I failed.
Yeah, no, not really, no. The two courses I took, they were college level courses. They were GE courses. I wasn't in college at the time. I was still in high school at that point. And then later, when I used Coursera for prep work and whatnot, they were all courses offered by universities. I think it was the University of Michigan and University of Washington in Seattle. So.
And I think we have time for one more question, either from Isa or from one of the students. So any final question for this panel?
All right. Well, I guess I'd love to hear from you guys. Any final suggestions? What can the people sitting here do to give you the support that you think you need when you're in an online class? Any ideas? Any suggestions?
One suggestion that I have is with the course design. Again, I think a lot of professors try to make them complex because they feel that students take online courses because students might think they're easier. But I don't believe that at all. I think more lazier students wouldn't be in a traditional classroom because you can get away with a lot more and you don't have to be responsible for time management and whatnot. So a lot of the courses, like a course I took last quarter, very just straight to the point, easy to manage, and now I think I have a teacher with this online course I'm in it that's like trying to make it all complex and links and all this stuff that you don't need, and it's kind of just making it more difficult. So I think straight to the point, and you're really working with students that are wanting to use this opportunity of an online course to help while they manage whatever other things they're dealing with while they're pursuing an education.
Okay. Yeah, Rich?
I have a couple suggestions, and these may or may not be entirely geared towards community colleges, but that's kind of my perspective and background. The first one is time. I don't know that very many professors go into teaching online understanding how ridiculous much time it takes, and how available they'll have to be to their students. And completely separate from that, we talked a little bit about before the centralized hub for community college courses, online courses, and I think UC and CSU talked a little bit about that as well in their systems. Kind of an evolution of that for me, which I was trying to get our chancellor's office to work on, not happening right now because of money, but would be a commonly accessible class management program, because every time you go into a new community college online course, you're learning a new thing. and a whole new program to manage and go through. And I mean, I've used Blackboard, Moodle, Turnitin.com, WordPress, I don't even know. And you spend half of the time learning how to use that program rather than learning the actual material, and it would help immensely if we just learned one and were able to use it.
Yep. Rich, I'd like to introduce you to Joe Moreau right here. You can talk to him about what their efforts are and what they should be doing. So, sorry for setting that up. But faculty who have all taught online courses, I believe. So it's more from the faculty perspective. And part of what we're asking them to address and get into the conversation is basically describe your experience teaching online courses, including which model you use, fully online or hybrid, or, what a little bit more description of what online courses you've taught or hybrid. And part of the topic in the last panel was getting at the fact that teaching online is not the same thing as teaching face-to-face. So what special considerations did you need to take into account as you were designing the course and teaching the course? Also, two other questions would be nice if we can address, sort of, what institutional support is needed for this type of mode? And then also, what have you learned by this? So I realize that's a handful. This one's going to be, a little bit tight on time, so we'll do our best to keep it to 5 minutes, but we're asking each of the faculty to address their experiences this way. We're going to have Suzanne Lohman, who's from the Department of Political Science at UCLA. And then we have Anna Sterling, who's adjunct faculty at Mount San Jacinto and the @ONE program coordinator. We have Peter Marcoux from the Marcoux from the English department at El Camino College. Wayne Smith, who's from the Department of Management at Cal State Northridge. And then we also have Meredith Curley, who's the executive dean at the College of Education with the University of Phoenix. So with that, I'd like to present the faculty panelist and get into our next discussion. So Suzanne?
So my name is Susanna Lohman, and I'm in the Political Science Department at UCLA. I developed a fully online course with 150 students. This was under the auspices of UC Online Education, and I believe you've heard Keith Williams speak earlier. He's the director. Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay. So this is a fully online course. There's no lecture in it. There's just games. So people learn about ethics and governance by playing games of cooperation, competition, collaboration, and coordination. And the way it works is that they each choose a pen name, because some of the ethical games they play, they might behave in ways that are greedy or wicked, and so you need to preserve some identity protection here. So each student plays under a pen name, and always in the first half of the week, they play a whole bunch of games, and then in the second half of the week, they go online, and now they see the data from the games they played. And so the educational effect is that first you're immersed in a game, and so you get kind of a frog's perspective, and then all of a sudden you get a bird's eye view of, oh, here's me and here's how everybody else is playing. Then also on this interface are all sorts of articles, both cutting-edge articles that just got published and also classical articles. And there's a prompt that says, oh, hey, this book chapter or article claims that people will behave in this way. Is that true? And then each student has to write a 3-page report. And so that's the rhythm of the course. That is, every week, play games, see data, look at the literature, and write your report. They do that 10 weeks in a row, and then they're done. Okay? So to give you an example of how one might learn something by playing games, so if we could go to the next slide. So what you're about to see is the so-called bureaucracy game, which is how information moves through a bureaucracy. The one before, yeah. So here you see 3 bureaucracies. The bureaucracies basically have to figure out that there's an iceberg there, but any one student only gets one little piece of the photo, and then collectively they have to figure out that there's an iceberg, and if they figure it out, they get points, okay? And so it becomes a bureaucracy. If you think of, for example, the columns as being departments, and so the person who gets this one piece of the photo has to report to their supervisor, and then the supervisors have to report to the director of the bureaucracy. And then you can afterwards examine the communication patterns and so forth to see why the bureaucracy is working, or most of the times they don't work, actually. Next slide, please. Students who take this online course can subsequently take a small enrollment game design course with me, where they learn about some of the complexities of designing a game like this. So here you have, for example, 2 pictures. One of them, the one on the right, does not work for the bureaucracy game. It turns out that the way it's constructed is, if you take any kind of piece of this, you cannot even remotely guess that it's a Dalmatian. You have to see the whole to know that it's a Dalmatian. Whereas the other game, the other picture, is too easy, because some of the people who see a certain piece can basically guess it's a Dalmatian without communicating with the other students, right? Next slide, please. So this is an example, for example, of a picture that works very well in the bureaucracy game. So you have just the right kind of distributed information that it then gets aggregated through the bureaucracy. Next slide, please. Okay, so why am I doing all of this? Well, I've taught ethics and governance at UCLA for about 20 years, and in ethics, the gold standard is the so-called Socratic dialogue, where the professor and the students all talk to each other, and Socratic dialogue works extremely well in batches of about 25 students. But over the years at UCLA, my classes got ever larger, and with 75 students, you're basically talking to the people in the front row, and there's nothing else going on in the class. So already in the classroom, I introduced games to supplement the Socratic dialogue, and so that you get this effect of people playing, immersed, and then all of a sudden getting an aggregate view. And then it turns out that these games actually work better online than in the classroom. And so there's both an issue of speeding up and scaling up the learning. Okay, that's it.
So, if you want your passion for teaching, we have it here. All right, Anna?
Well, obviously it's going to be difficult to follow up that, but I'll try. So I've been teaching at the community college district, or in that system, for about 8 years, completely online. So I don't know how many courses that is. Sometimes 3 courses a semester, sometimes 1. It varies, but and when I started out, I had no teaching experience. I came from industry with industry knowledge about office management and going through that side of so presenting my information that way. So when I jumped into education, I was like, I'm just going to do what everybody who before me has done and the way I learned. And I started realizing that my students were really upset with that, and I wasn't happy with what was going on. And I started thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. And at the same time that I began teaching, and I didn't have a bachelor's degree. So I was going back to school to get my bachelor's degree and teaching at community college basic, under like non-transferable courses in business, computer application stuff, and going to school at the same time. And I started realizing I'm a student. I have a unique perspective to bring to my online courses. How do I do that? And I started thinking about all the things that made sense to me and what I didn't like and what I did like, and how do I bring those into my course? And that really changed the way that I designed my online courses. So one thing that I do with my students now is that I have every single one of my courses starts out with 1 week as a course-specific online orientation. Teaches them how to navigate the environment, tells them what's expected in the course, not only from them, but what they can expect from me. How they're going to be doing assignments, what the rhythm of the course is, all of that information is the first week, before they ever even get to the content of the course curriculum. If they can't get through that first week, they don't proceed on to the rest of the course, because they will not be successful. And that's what they're told up front, is the reason you're doing this is to help you succeed at this course. If you can't meet these requirements, then it's going to be more difficult for you to succeed, and I'm not going to set you up to fail. So that's what I wanted from my courses going forward. All of this led me to then my passion is, being instructional designer. And that's the support I think that our online courses really need, is instructional design, which then led me to @ONE, which is a grant that's funded by the Chancellor's Office that provides technology training to faculty and staff at all of the community colleges. And we have an online teaching certification program that really focuses on making sure that faculty and staff have those knowledge, skills, and abilities to understand how to design a course for success for students in the online environment and not just set them up for failure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna. And Pete?
I taught my first online class solely online in 1999. I was given a username and password to Hypernews from Northridge and to Quizmaker, and I was given a web page. I had taught the class twice before. I was new to teaching, given no support, no technical training. I was just told to start teaching this class. We needed an online presence. I was a part-time instructor. Obviously, it failed miserably, so I apologize to your brethren and sisters. We started with 35 and one passed, and I had to beg that person to, and it turned into a hybrid. The student came in and we did more one-on-one work. Since then, I've been teaching online. I received a certificate in online instruction through Cal State East Bay. And I discovered that my true passion, the thing that fits my teaching style is the hybrid model. In high school, I was, luckily assigned a book called Megatrends by Nesbitt. And one trend stood out to me, and it's called high tech, high touch. And I think this building represents that. It's the more technology that we have, the more social interaction we thrive, we want. And we have, 4 floors here that demonstrates that. And so my classes now that I teach mainly remedial classes, and they are hybrid. We have more or less 5 levels of classes below transfer level English. They're split into reading and writing. 3 years ago, we started a pilot where we did an accelerated. We took the 2 reading classes below freshman comp and 2 writing classes, and we combine them, and then we link them. This semester, I'll be linking with myself, so I'm teaching the students 4 days a week, 8 to 12:30. 2 hours will be dedicated to the reading class, and then 2 hours to the writing class. The writing class is in a computer lab 2 days a week, the reading class 1 day a week. For the reading class, what I do is Monday through Wednesday is the lecture in the typical class. On the Thursday, I allow the students the privilege of working from home because all of the work is online. We use textbook websites and various other programs, Total Reader. And I call it a privilege because they have to do the work. I found that the skill set for this demographic, they need that structure. You can't just give these students most of them are fresh out of high school, that freedom to work from home because they won't get it done. And so I check each week, and if they don't do the work, they're put in the penalty box, right? And I post that penalty box online, and then they have to come the next class, and then they can redeem themselves, and we go on from there. And that model is working. And I find the first day that I give them that freedom, I have 1 or 2 students show up, maybe some more, because they don't have access to computers or their rides or things like that. By the end of the semester, most of them are showing up on Thursday mornings. And so I think that's telling and kind of supports that Nesbitt bit. In terms of the accelerated program that we're doing, you heard Dean talk about the dismal numbers for these types of students. Well, we're having tremendous success. In 2010, our cohort, 30 some odd students, 75% passed transfer level English within a year after leaving our program. So that's kind of amazing. Yep. And I think the online environment allows them to do that.
Yep. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate that you bring up the whole subject of structure, because that's one thing that we see quite often in online, particularly for younger students, is the need for that structure. But Wayne, I'd like to hand it to you.
Thank you for inviting me here today. I am a product of the community college system. I walked to LA City College and then took the bus to Cal State Northridge. I teach mostly business courses, and I'm in the management department, so I teach mostly org behavior, negotiation, leadership, that kind of stuff. But I do other things as well. I volunteer to teach freshmen, student athletes. I also teach Shakespeare. I teach mostly in the traditional format, but I do increasingly some online work. We do a lot of hybrid work. And that's about it. We don't do too much online. We have a little bit of online in the College of Business for tech-oriented courses like finance and a little bit in operations. But for the qualitative reasoning courses like management, marketing, and law, the faculty, at least in the business side, have decided that those work better in traditional formats or occasionally hybrid formats. But there are plenty of other programs at Northridge that work online. Not just the master's program, but one that wasn't mentioned before is upper division transfer general education, to make sure that there are no bottlenecks in the transfer and that there's always places for the students in that particular place. What considerations do I give when I develop an online course? First of all, everything I do is in OpenCourseWare and Creative Commons, and has been that way for multiple years. My first course online was in 1993, and all the materials are like that. I'm not just talking about incorporating open educational resources, but making sure the syllabi, the course outline, and all the materials are licensed that way as well. And I think that that's really important. So adding stuff for online means making good prompts for the discussion questions. We are not quite at the place either at Northridge or in the CSU where we have real-time captioning like we heard before, where we can just send out a video and have it be captioned. That's a big deal at a place like Northridge, which has the largest collection of deaf students in the country, next to Gallaudet University. So this ability to deal with differently abled students is extremely important, but also very complicated task to do. So those are areas where I could use a little bit of help. I also do the programming in the college when a faculty member needs something customized, like replicating functionality in the Open Learning Initiative from Carnegie Mellon for the operations courses, doing things in R and Python that need to be then generated in test banks for Moodle and things like that. In general, for me to do a better job with students, I'm going to need more information about them. That helps with progression. Now, I told you before, everything that I do is up online in OpenCourseWare and is in months in advance, and everything's archived online too. So the students have access to all the information, but I actually don't know that much about the student to be able to help them in the matriculation process. And I'm not sure how to overcome the legal hurdles on that, not just for differently abled students, but for students who can matriculate at different speeds. One of the things that I've learned in the courses that I've taught is that the grade distributions can vary more widely in an online course, even in a hybrid course, than they can regularly. The grades are less nuanced, and I'm not sure exactly what that means over time, but it could mean something's not right if that's true too. So we have to be very careful about what an A means, especially if somebody can retake the quizzes multiple times. That can help in the learning, but I'm not sure what it signals to employers. The other thing, and this is a research interest of mine, not just an educational interest, but the students do a great deal of writing, not just in my course, but in the other courses as well. And I know how to automate the drill and kill and other things in the quantitative reasoning, but knowing how to evaluate short answers and essays with technology is non-trivial. You need finite state transducers and latent semantic analysis. And we're not quite there yet. And so that's something that I'd like to do. Pearson and ETS have things for us, but I'm not sure it's good enough. So there's work to do in that area because I don't want to conflate technology with scale. Some parts of the learning process don't scale as readily as the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne. And Meredith?
I'm going to take this a bit up. As Executive Dean for the College of Education, I work with faculty across the college, and I also serve as interim provost for the university. So in thinking about how do we service the students' needs as well as our faculty needs online is something that's certainly part of every day in my world. One of the key fundamentals for us is a lot of faculty training on the front end. We utilize practitioner faculty, which is really key. Our students continue to express an interest in being engaged with practitioners consistently to understand what's relevant and what's currently happening in those fields that they're pursuing. And one of the things that was mentioned earlier is sometimes the skill sets of instructing in a classroom do not always translate to instructing online. So we spend a great deal of time in faculty training to help folks think about how are you facilitating. Classroom management online is certainly different than classroom management in a physically based environment. So there's a lot of training that goes in on the front end, and also understanding the commitment that it takes to facilitate online. It's a 24/7 opportunity to engage with folks. We all work in different paces and different times, and I might want to be up at 4 a.m. and you may want to be up at midnight. So how do we make sure that faculty understand the commitment of facilitating online and being available to students? Really, office hours never end, right? So there's a lot of time and engagement as well. We also hear from faculty that they oftentimes know those online students better and in more depth than they do students that may be in their face-to-face classes, because there's no opportunity to hide, if you will. In a face-to-face course, if you choose not to participate, if you choose not to raise your hand or engage, you can kind of be quiet in the back. In an online course, everyone's engaging, everyone's participating. Our platform is such that you're engaging around course materials and content actively all the time, whether it's an ebook or if it's a video collection, but that constant interaction and dialogue. And so faculty really say that they have the opportunity to know their students in a much more robust way. And I think the platform and the resources itself are really key to making sure that we're meeting the needs of all kinds of learners, whereas I really might want to engage with something that's visual because that's how I learn best. My fellow students may want to read some current information and literature, and that's easier for them because they would prefer it that way. It's fun for us to find tools that help engage students in a multitude of ways and also allow faculty to be able to utilize resources that are appropriate for the students in that particular course. So I think that the platform and the amount of dynamic resources that we make available for students and faculty have really created a really amazing cultural environment, and also an environment for quality engagement between both sides. So just kind of some bigger picture perspective.
Thank you very much. And
Thank
before we turn you over to the students and as they get on your case, Pete, for your initial course, I did have one follow-up question. Wayne mentioned something interesting in the perspective of, since we're talking access with online education, you put a real emphasis on open educational resources, including syllabus, and making those generally available. That's an important part. Any others, is that an important consideration for any other people as part of how you look at online education? Any comments?
Got lots of microphones. I definitely agree with that. One of the things that I use in my classes are instructional videos extensively, because I feel like in the online environment, there's a great opportunity to draw people in when you can see another person. And a lot of times when you have that interaction, that changes the dynamics of the isolation feeling that we can have in distance education. So I use instructional videos, and all of those videos, I create them specifically for my courses that I teach, but I put them out on YouTube and they're open access. Anybody who wants them can use them. And I have instructors all over the place contacting me, can I use these in my course? I'm like, yes, they're on YouTube, they're free, they're out there, anybody who wants them can use them. So I think that idea of creating things that can be shared across disciplines, across schools, across, the ethos really is amazing part of where we sit with distance education and opportunity, and it creates amazing access. All of my videos are captioned, all of those kinds of things. And people who aren't even taking the class or taking any class are watching those videos and gaining education or knowledge from them. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity for sharing that can happen from these.
Yeah, so two interesting things, and I'm going to hand it over to the students. One is it's not just the cost of the material, but it's the collaboration of online best practices. I'm hearing both of those things. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Isa and the students.
All right, well, students, I'd love to know what stood out to you about what was just said, and how does it relate to your experiences?
All right. Okay, so I really like all of you. Thank you. I don't know, engaged, excited faculty are just great people. So anyways, Wayne, well, I almost said things and that just wasn't gonna work. I don't know. I passed English, so I figured I better, utilize my vocabulary. Anyway, so Wayne mentioned, well, actually, first I want to tag onto that question about OER and kind of the Creative Commons phenomenon that's been happening. And as a student, and a lot of the students that I talk to and work with, it's really important for us to see our faculty engaged in kind of perpetual learning. And I think that the easiest way to do that is to look at what other faculty are doing, a lot of whom are practitioners or come recently from the field or go back and forth or whatever. And you know, the mechanism to do that is Creative Commons and OER and sharing. And so I'm so down with that. And low cost, I mean, come on, really? So I'm just saying, $200 textbook, I don't even buy them anymore. Like, why am I going to pay? Anyways, so we're not going to talk about that. But
that's the next one.
But on the student records thing, I thought that was probably one of the most interesting things that I've heard all day. To me, I hadn't really connected that particular issue with online education, but it makes perfect sense. And relatively recently, there's been a conversation about transitioning records from K-12 rather than destroying them, burning them, and locking the ashes and then blowing up the ashes. That we would transition those into the other systems, that they would follow the students so that we could know more about the people that we're teaching. And I think that would be an invaluable asset, not only for online, but also in the classroom, especially online though. And then the last thing that stood out to me was the multiple methods of delivery that was talked about with online being a good mechanism or a good way to deliver content in different ways that the classroom just frankly limits you in how many ways you can deliver the material. And so I thought that was a really good point that online is, I mean, that's one area where it absolutely excels.
One question I had, well, in my research, I do a lot of work on access and equity in education. We talk a lot about access to different forms of education, traditionally in the classroom and online. But what strides have been made towards equality of outcomes? Like how often, what strides do we make towards helping students finish the course and, you know, pass the course and gain the skills within online classes? I know there are some problems with that on the traditional side, but I'm really curious about the online side. How does that work in the online courses?
I'll jump in again. I just have to say, these are the kinds of questions that I love hearing from students, because they're the things that I strive for when I'm developing courses, again, with my passion being in instructional design. It's about how do we design courses that make sense to our students. Doing things the way that we've always done them doesn't mean it's the best way to do them today. And so when I work with my students, I mean, my courses that are online are probably very different than most of the people who teach in my discipline. I teach a lot of computer applications, and that's usually just, you know, follow the textbook, turn in the assignment kind of stuff. But I've worked really hard to build in a lot of authentic assessments in my course, meaning how are you taking what you're doing in this course and applying it to the real world? And what does that mean to you? And not just write it in a paper. Create it in a video, do it as an electronic poster, you know, write a song. However it comes to you to explain your understanding of the knowledge, do it. And then there's a rubric that says, okay, here are the things that you need to be able to demonstrate in however you do it. By using that common rubric, everybody gets assessed the same way, no matter what the product is that they're creating. So I think that's just one way we can look at, you know, creating access for people who have different skills and abilities. And just because you're really good at taking tests doesn't mean you know more about this subject. And I think that's an important message to get out.
Pete, get Suzanne first, and then Pete.
Well, I'd first like to address the first question over there. As land-grant universities, like the University of California, we are obviously very sort of regionally focused, but worldwide there is something going on like the internationalization of higher education. There's a global higher education revolution going on, and in the last 20 years, the percentage of students that are in developing countries is now 1/2, where it used to be 1/3. And so I actually completely agree with Wayne that we should do all of this open source so that our stuff scales up in a very peculiar way, namely not that one ethics teacher sort of develops a canned course that gets seen by everybody in the world, but that, for example, a professor in India could take my stuff, adjust it for whatever they have, the kinds of issues they have in India, which surely are somewhat different than the kinds of issues we are grappling with in California, and then develop a class with it, right? And I think, in California, we're usually thinking of California students, which are obviously important enough, right? But I think we also do have to start thinking a little bit more internationally. And then my second response now to your question. So people sometimes ask me if my class would work for students at other universities or university levels and so forth. And there I have to say that I designed this class for a very particular set of students. Namely, I teach political science, and these are graduating seniors in political science. And for them, it works great, okay? But one has to, of course, keep in mind that by the time a student is a graduating senior in political science, that student has gone through an awful lot of selection, right? So first of all, he had to get into UCLA, and then she had to survive, the first 3 years at UCLA, where you get socialized in all sorts of ways, right? And so in the way the class is currently designed, it probably would not work for high school students or just sort of random students somewhere, right? Which brings me to my next point, and that is we need to think more about, and I think people mentioned this in earlier sessions, the selection effects that go on, and then also the instructional design issues. So one thing I do is that I admit 200 students to my class, and then in the first 2 weeks, 50 drop out, but then the remaining 50 stick with it all the way to the end, and every one of them, and the grades are really good, right? And so 50 students basically decide, this format is not for me, right? And so we actually do at universities need to offer alternatives and acknowledge that students are very diverse. One student wants to learn their stuff in a classroom, and another, incidentally, in the kinds of evaluations I got, they are very extreme, that there's students who say this is the best course I ever took at UCLA, and at the other extreme end, students who say, I will never take an online course again, right? And so the point is students are diverse, and the stuff we offer them has to be correspondingly diverse, right? And then finally, I completely disagree with whoever suggested that we should create a course on how to take an online course. I mean, first of all, it sounds like an incredibly dreary course to take. But the other thing is that when you think of the standard in design is to put the work into the instructional design so that the students can just sort of see what they have to do. So it's just like when you buy an Apple computer, for instance, and you open the box, and then you just sort of set up the computer, and it's kind of obvious what you need to do, and then all of a sudden it's up and running. Now, those of us who are 50 years old like me will remember the computers 20 years ago when you bought a new computer. It was just a pain in the neck, and you spent hours on end with customer support and so forth, right? So Apple put work into the design so that then the consumer has no work. And in the same way, we need to, in terms of the instructional design, we need to design our courses that the student just simply goes online, and it's kind of obvious what he needs to do. And if the student has a question, there's sort of a convenient box or something that he clicks on, and then it tells the student what to do. Yeah.
Thank you. And Pete, you had one point, and then we'll turn it back
quickly. To answer your question, I don't think the technology is there yet to help my students, the remedial students. I think it's coming, it's down the road, and Wayne talked about, you don't have a program that can grade essays, right? And so I think, for the remedial students, which are the majority of the students in the state, the technology isn't there for them to be solely online, that they need at least a hybrid model.
Thank you.
So students, as we finish up this session, I wanted to ask, do any of you have an example of an online professor or an online course that you really loved? And can you tell us about, what worked about it and what your professor did and sort of why you loved that course?
I can comment on that. I had an online course actually recently. It was in information system security. And that course, I have to say, was one of my favorite courses online. And I want to say that because they recently redesigned the online portal and the website. And so there's more tools available for me, like the online tutoring, the online tutorials on how to use PowerPoint or Word, and there's just more tools on there and collaboration. There's a new chat feature where students can chat with each other and actually interact that way. But I love the diversity. I love the having that for me, the group work was my favorite as well, because I think having different opinions on certain assignments, having different views, gives you a broader perspective on other ideas other than just yourselves. And that was my experience online. So.
Nancy.
One of the courses that I took that was not only online, but it was also an instructional class physically, was a linguistics class. And I believe that I wouldn't have had the same experience at all if it wouldn't have been for the online. There was a lot that gave examples of videos of how people spoke of different countries and the language. And I believe that if it wasn't for that like online experience, I would have never passed that class. And I have people that have taken that same class just physically, and they didn't pass the class because the online experience added something completely that you wouldn't have gotten just taking it physically. So.
Time for one more. I'd love to actually ask our faculty if you have a question that you'd like to ask the students while you're here.
This will be graded.
How did you stay motivated when you took online classes? What really helped you to make sure? You talked about Sunday night, right? That dreaded, oh, I better log on, right? What helped you? What skills do students need to complete online courses?
I would say it has to be the flexibility component. I have to agree with Dwayne on that. Because like I know today, by Friday at 10 p.m., I have some assignments due for my online class. So after this, I got to rush on home to meet that deadline. But, that flexibility is what helps in the instructor always just giving those updates instead of just, these are the directions, here's the syllabus, but they're checking in weekly. Hey, this is what you need to do. Or, hey, I haven't gotten a lot of this, or do you need help with this? And not only here's my office number, here's INIT support and all that stuff. So having the professor just constantly engaging with the students, that always kind of helps with keeping me motivated with the online course.
Yeah, actually, just see if any more, Nancy.
I also think that what's very important for faculty to acknowledge is that a lot of us that do take online classes, it's because we have a busy schedule. So those reminders are the best thing. Sometimes it could be a deadline at midnight, but you get that reminder at like 10 p.m. or something. And you're like, oh, I need to turn that in. So I believe that those reminders are really the best that a faculty member could do.
Sure. And Anna, you had one more question?
Yeah. I was just wondering, in any of the online classes that you've taken, did any of the faculty use video and or social media to enhance the courses, and what impact did that have?
Yeah, that was another thing I was going to say, Anna. Your example of YouTube and stuff, I think that's what makes a good feeling about the online courses, when the professor's like, here, check out this YouTube link, and this video explains this, and then here's a link to this Los Angeles Times article, or this CNN news clip about this. That's always the best feeling, because it just makes you, for a lot of students, if you're not online for homework, you're online for social media, Facebook, Twitter, so you can see like, oh my gosh, this information is just out there. So when you make those connections for students, that's the best thing, and I encourage that the faculty always continue to kind of use those like-minded, open-based stuff to connect to what you're trying to get across in your lessons.
Rich? Just very quickly. Very quick, there we go. Very quickly, one of my professors that I took an in-person class with, but he was talking to me about a tool that he used called SoundCloud, which is something a lot of artists use to post their music. But he would post lectures, and students can comment on specific points in the lecture, and everybody in the class can see that. And that may be a tool that you might look at. He's been very successful using it.
Okay. Well,
Question.
yes.
It does sound like online education will not scale up, though, because everything that you're saying suggests that there has to be a faculty presence.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, so I want to thank this panel. This has been an excellent discussion. So thank you very much. I would like to point out, I think that 20 Million Minds stacked the deck, however, but it's excellent to hear. I mean, think of how motivational it is to have faculty who are engaged in the topic and trying to figure out how learning best works with this medium, and the feedback of learning what works and doesn't work. So I applaud. This is an excellent panel. Thank you very much. All right, as we're switching panels, I got a note from my wife that I'm saying too much and I picked the wrong tie this morning. I was going to point out to her, if she were tweeting that, I would actually have seen that comment earlier over there. So 20mm Evolve is a hashtag for people who want to tweet. A lot of great conversations going on here today. All right, so for our final panel, I want to bring up Scott Lay, President and CEO of the Community College League, Michelle Siqueiros, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Executive Director, the Campaign for College Opportunity, and Debbie Cochrane, the Research Director from the Institute for College Access and Success. And we're going to be looking a little bit more at the policy level with this panel. So basically, what policy recommendations can support online learning? And some of the questions we're going to be asking the panelists to, see, I just did. Some of the questions we're going to be getting the panelists to address are, what are the current state of higher education, in particular for the access, the demographics we're looking at, in particular for Latino and African American students? And how do you think online education can best help and support students to be successful in their endeavors? And I just want to go back also to, as we keep talking about a lot of the entry-level issues, the remedial education issues, the roadblocks that we have in higher education, what policy issues can help us address removing these roadblocks or giving aid to getting people over these roadblocks? So with that, I'd like to start this panel, and I'll start off with Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I told my daughter, who's 11, that I was coming to talk about technology in higher ed, and I asked her what she thought. And she said, well, that's great, because every job you need technology and you need a computer. She's like, but it's also terrible, because, students only play games on those things, right, Mom? Coming from an 11-year-old that loves her Kindle and appreciates technology far too much as well. So anyway, thanks for having me. I'm hoping that I don't sound too dreary, but they asked me to tell you or talk to you a little bit about the state of higher education in California. And that's not why I'm wearing black, but I think it is very frustrating and disappointing that we live in, I think, one of the best states in the nation, and that our higher education system isn't as well funded, isn't as successful, in spite of it being actually pretty fabulous at the same time, right? I think many of you in this space know that there is a projected shortage. We are simply not keeping up with the demand for educated workers. And many studies have pointed out to this. 2.3 million more college graduates is what we need by 2025. 2.3 million more, and that includes all of those with a bachelor's degree as well as certificates and associate degrees from community colleges. And I just wanted to show you a few slides that kind of tell you some of the challenges we face and opportunities. We have a growing young adult population in California, so what's exciting is in some states they don't even have enough young people to educate. That's certainly not our problem in California. But the demographics look different. We are soon to be a majority Latino state. In fact, today, if you look at all of those young people under 18, 1 in 2 are Latino. And this next slide is especially troubling when we look, or we know that fact, because this will show you sort of what educational attainment looks like for all Californians, and for Latinos in particular. We only have amongst Latinos over 25, only 11% have a baccalaureate degree. So 1 in 2 young people are Latino in California, and we have the lowest educational attainment. 41% have no high school diploma or anything equivalent. The next chart just shows you what educational attainment is for whites, followed by African Americans in our state. And here it's, I think, really interesting that we have a lot of African Americans in California that have some college, means they went to college, but they didn't complete or earn a certificate or degree. And finally, Asian Pacific Islanders. So we're on track essentially to produce a generation of young people that are less educated than we are, which is, I think, pretty tragic. And here you can see what the completion rates are by community college, Cal State, and UC. So while some of the good news was reported early or last year that Latinos are going to college in higher and higher numbers, unfortunately they're not completing college. And the majority of them are going to community college where they're least likely to complete college. So those are some of the challenges that we face, and certainly I think when we released, and actually we have an infographic on some of the key findings of these two reports. We did one on the state of Latinos in California higher ed, the state of African Americans in California higher ed, and also broken down by gender. Because then folks started asking us, well, what's the difference by gender amongst Black women and men and Latino women and men? So we have those reports on our website at collegecampaign.org. You can actually pick up an infographic on your way out today as well. And next week, we're going to be releasing another report on just how California is doing compared to other states. How many of you like being average? Well, that's how California is doing. We're doing average on most indicators of higher education attainment. And so here we are in the state that used to be kind of at the forefront of higher education, just doing average in terms of participation, in terms of completion, in terms of financing higher education. So I think all of those trends are trends that are certainly not acceptable in our minds. We are pushing for, at the Campaign for College Opportunity, our state leaders to actually develop a plan. Your parents tell you, have a goal, because if you don't have a goal, you're probably not going to get there. And I think that's what's happening in California. We have no goal. We have no plan for what we want to do for higher education, for how we want to incorporate technology, how we're going to close gaps for students of color, and yet we think miraculously somehow we're going to get there. So we're hoping that developing a goal for our state will be something that all of you will join us in pushing for. And I've gotten the wrap-up sign, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah. Actually, before we move on, I did have one question to contrast two panels. There has been, Dean in his introduction talked about that there seems to have been a lot of change over the past year within the state as far as focusing on access. So what's your perspective on are we moving in the right direction? Are you starting to see a goal for the state with the use of technology over the last year and at the three systems? So I realize I'm putting you on the spot, but the two comments sort of run into each other.
I think, this year's proposed budget by the governor is certainly a move in the right direction. We have more funding for higher education. There's some indications in the budget around improving outcomes and success. I think you have a governor that supports technology and using that effectively to improve the throughput of students. So I think we are moving in the right direction. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you couldn't really talk about student success the way everybody is talking about student success, without some folks feeling very defensive about talking about student success, that somehow it means that we want to close off access. Well, no, in my opinion, the goal when we want students to go to college, we want them to go there so that they can get something that will make them more productive, will allow them to step into the middle class. And so I don't think that they're mutually exclusive goals. And I'm very excited by, I think, the direction of the state. And here's an opportunity now that we're out of this recession to do even more. But there's still no plan. So that part is still a challenge.
Okay, thank you. Debbie?
Thanks. I'm Debbie Cochran with TICAS. For those of you who aren't familiar with TICAS, TICAS stands for the Institute for College Access and Success. We're based in Oakland, do research and policy work here in California and nationally on college cost and financing policy. We also do a lot of work specifically on community college students, and mostly because that's where the lowest income students tend to go to college. More than 40% of students nationally go to community colleges. 2/3 of students here in California go to community colleges. And one of the things that I know I am frequently asked when I'm talking about community college student access to aid is, why do people need access to aid when they're going to low-cost institutions? Why do they need that in California when fees are so low, when we have this fee waiver? Why should we be subsidizing their lunches at Wendy's? And what I try to say is, I want to be subsidizing their lunches at Wendy's if Wendy's is on campus or it's in the, the student union. I want them to be able to stay on campus between classes to be able to buy their lunch there, on school, on site, so that they can better position themselves to go to campus office hours for faculty. They can spend more time in the library. I want to subsidize their transportation to and from campus so that they can get there and they don't have to make choices about whether or not they pay for that monthly bus pass or skip classes. So, I think all of those things really boil down to translating financial aid into a mechanism to promote student engagement. And we know student engagement is key to keeping students enrolled in college, doing well in college. So we have to support students' engagement. And I think here's where we kind of enter online education. And it's not that online education can't be engaging. Of course, it has to be engaging. But it doesn't happen on the natural like it does in traditional course formats. You have to really bake it in. You have to bake it in very intentionally. And sometimes I think by doing that, if you're going to do that well, you sometimes sidestep the original goals, like, for instance, making it cheaper. So, I think we've talked a lot about, time-saving strategies, and how online education or technology can make college easier. I think we need the perspective that college is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be time-consuming. We want people spending time on college on task. We want the students to have the time to study. And so we have to make sure that online education and the use of technology is not undermining those goals. I think from a policy question, I think our kind of broad panel was to talk about, generally policy recommendations. And I think the biggest recommendations that I would have is to be very thoughtful about what solution you're trying to come up with. What is the problem that you want to solve? Is it enabling more students to go to college so that we can just increase the numbers of people enrolled? Is it providing some key targeted courses to ease some of the bottlenecks in our public institutions? Is it delivering education in a more cost-effective way? Is it reaching 21st century students in a way that they're more accustomed to? All of these are serious issues for California, for the nation. There's no smoking gun for any of them, but I think too frequently online education and technology is positioned as the smoking gun for all of them. And that's just not appropriate. I think we have to consider each one of those separately. We have to look very hard at the research on who succeeds where and how, and deliver our plan, come up with our plan appropriately. Certainly, for instance, there's no doubt that providing online education, spots in online universities creates more space for students to enroll in college, but is it really meaningful access? The University of Phoenix representative who was here earlier spoke about the tremendous number of low-income, underrepresented students that the University of Phoenix enrolls, which sounds really, really great. The problem is that the University of Phoenix online campus has a 4% graduation rate for the students who are seeking bachelor's degrees. Only 4% of the students who go to University of Phoenix online to get a bachelor's degree actually receive that bachelor's degree in 6 years. So that's a problem. And we really need to question whether that is meaningful access. How should we feel about the fact that hundreds of thousands of students are enrolling in this college, and disproportionately low-income, underrepresented students in higher education? So these are some of the ways that the solution, which might look great on the face, is not actually as straightforward or as great as it might seem.
Sure. So we definitely need to focus on success, and I'd like to turn it over to Scott.
Well, it's really redefining access, success, and equity. And Michelle was correct when she mentioned that, we really have had a complete theme change. Probably the last 4 to 5 years. I know we did our report on student success in 2010. Michelle's organization was doing some great work leading up to it, but that's really when things changed. And now that money is coming back, it's really the time where we have to take a pause and say, how do we define student access, student success, and most importantly, student equity? which was something that people didn't even want to put on the table in the early success and access conversations. Michelle mentioned about her daughter and technology, and it reminds me, when I graduated law school in 2000, we at UC Davis, we were all just doing, pen and paper and everything, and now technology is in the classroom. And my wife teaches a local government class at UC Davis Law, and now everybody has laptops, and she teaches on Monday night. Well, you know what that means? Monday night football. And like when the Niners are playing, it's like everybody's down like this. So she actually changed when she does her class to the spring semester. So she only has to encounter that for, well, actually she didn't, because it started last week. We're already in playoffs. But it's actually thinking about those sorts of things that technology comes with it, certain downsides to the educational experience. You've also seen as laptops have been introduced to the classroom in law schools, bar passage rates have gone down because students aren't doing the cognitive thinking and understanding and interacting with a faculty member, and they just sit there and transcribe. Even if they're not playing games or watching Monday Night Football, you get into a transcription as opposed to I hate to write. So what I write is going to be something very important, and I'm going to use my brain to determine what is important. But for far too long, the California community colleges and my associations, the Association of the 72 Community College Districts, we've defined access on the top line. That's what we care about, whether it's a local college president or whether it's a system chancellor or a person in my talking points role. Be like, we're so proud to serve 3 million students. What the hell does that mean? Our participation rate is 9.2%. We want to get it up to 10%. Well, who is being served and how are they being served? And that's where we turn to the success and equity questions. And I do think that there is a renewed attention being paid to success and equity, although I fear that the return of money will cause more division than we've seen in the last couple of years. And what we need to do is differentiate in technology and in student success between the efficiency, the throughput, for efficiency's sake. We have a capacity and a funding problem, therefore we need to get more students through faster. Well, a lot of community college leaders, faculty and staff in particular, will reject that. Our students need to take the time they need to complete, and it may take 6, 7 years to complete. And that may be the case, but we also have to understand that we're stealing from that student every day we keep them in college longer than they need to be. And that's where technology, I think, really can play a role in how do we assess, provide assessment review, and bring students up to college level much faster. The numbers that Michelle was sharing about African American and Latino students, the crime is for far too long. We've been underplacing students. We underplace students, number one, at the high school level when they're making college decisions. Oh, you know what? You'll be better off going to the local community college. Help your family business. And then if they go to the community college, we underplace them again. We are educationally lowballing students. And you know as well as I know that socioeconomic class and therefore race plays a very large role. And the transition from a low-fee state, perhaps a necessary transition from a low-fee state to a high-fee, high-aid state, means that those that are the most connected, meaning those the highest socioeconomic classes, meaning white and Asian students, are going to be disproportionately informed about their choices in higher education. And so that's what we really have to think about is, I get the question once in a while, I think my kid can go to Stanford, but they'll save a lot of money going to community college. Let me tell you, the financial decision always will say, go to Stanford. Stanford's going to take care of that kid from the day they walk on campus to the day they graduate. And I have to tell you, you're going to get lost in community college. And it's up to us, and we'll talk more about what we can do to use technology and use what we know to ensure a much better throughput, but for the right sake of success and equity.
Okay. One thing is we get into the student comments, and because there have been some pretty strong statements made, and I didn't get on your case, but I wanted to understand the difference of what I heard in earlier sessions and from what you're saying of not having a plan. I'd also like to, Debbie, you made some very strong statements. We have two student panelists. I wouldn't mind putting you on the spot, Joe and Melody, where you both attended the University of Phoenix. And so I don't want to get into a debate on the University of Phoenix, but I would like to ask you the question to get started. You guys have succeeded in college at the University of Phoenix, and then you heard the statements about the low success rate. Are you two aberrations, or do you have any comment on that? To be provocative, I just would like to get some comments.
I want to say that what probably comes into play here, I think, is the level of maturity as well, in terms of wanting your degree and completing it. I do believe that maybe younger generations that are coming out of high school, online is kind of a little more difficult for them, so they do drop out. But at my level, I'm 37 years old, so I want it. That I'm at that level where I just want it. So I think that definitely plays a role.
Sure. And Melody, you were younger when you got your BS degree there, so could you add some comments?
I think the maturity level does take a big toll on everything, but I don't know. I think I just feel like I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Well, I guess part of what I'm picking up on, you had mentioned the fact that one of the things that really struck me at dinner last night when you were talking is I know you said that, like, with your maturity, now that you're older,
Yes.
that you have more patience. But even when you were describing what you went through as an online student, you were bullheaded. It's like, I'm not going to let things hold me back from getting my degree. You had a very strong passion to complete.
It was just self-determination. It was just, I had to do it. I couldn't fail myself. I couldn't fail my siblings. And so I just wanted to basically show them, like, regardless to what you've came from, the things that you don't have, you're still capable of doing those things.
Okay, thank you.
If I can make a comment, I think that once a student decides they're going to go into higher education, whether it be an online university system, the University of California, Cal State, community college, that student has made a choice, and a conscious choice, to pursue a degree. So I believe that at that moment in time, it is the institution's responsibility to ensure that student's success. And so while some people may say, well, that student wanted it, I didn't want it, maturity levels, I think that may be an individual factor to consider, but that can't be the deciding factor whether or not that student succeeds at the university system. And I believe that a 4% graduation rate, there can't be 96% of the student population that does not want that degree, having had already invested time, effort, and energy into pursuing their degree. So that's just my...
institutions have some responses, sure. But Isa?
I wanted to ask you guys, as they had those numbers up there based on demographically in California, how students are achieving education. How does that make you feel, based on the one that you identify with? How does that make you feel seeing those numbers? And more importantly, what does that look like in your own community, where you're coming from? Why do you think those numbers are the way they are? And what are you actually seeing, in real life, in the people that you're around who maybe aren't going to college?
I would like to just add to answer that, but also I just would like to say I appreciate the work that all three of you do and the organizations that you represent. I know sometimes it's controversial topics, but it's the truth and it's honesty, and I think sometimes some people might not want to hear that, and so I appreciate you, being honest with what you're coming at us with. And I think we have a very diverse group of student panelists, and I know we all can't speak for our, prospective, ethnic groups or anything, but this is something that we need to keep in mind. And I know we just had our faculty panelist here. I think this is something, as all of us represent our different organizations and campuses, we have to realize that there are underdogs out there, and there's people that are trying to go through the system, and that's what has to keep us passionate about going above and beyond and going to help others experience higher education and give back in that way. So I appreciate you bringing that forward, and I hope that all of us take that from this, that we have to support each other in any way that we can going through higher education in this state.
I think for me, I would like to piggyback on how you say we kind of sell ourselves short. Because like I said, I came from a rough background, and people telling me that you can't do it, I think that was just taking the short way out. And so I worked in a juvenile hall before, and so I always encourage the students, no matter, even though you're in juvenile hall, you can still make changes. And so don't sell yourself short. Strive for your goals, and try to make your career change everything.
Are they listening to you?
Yes, some of them. Some of them.
Sorry, this is my level or my area of interest. I am incredibly proud to have been brought up in a Latino community, in a Latino household. Spanish is my first language, and it is incredibly painful to me to see that the state in higher education in K through 14 is, in my opinion, failing these students. And in large part, the conversation about online education, I have to agree with Ms. Siqueiros and Ms. How do you say your last name? Cochran? Yes. About there not being an actual target on what online education is supposed to meet, what goal or what issue it's supposed to meet. Because in my conversations with it, I've heard things from having it be a more cost-effective method to instruct students, having it be a way to assist students in their matriculation and actual graduation in college. It's gone to, how are we gonna have a more educated population overall? And so it's almost like a moving target, and we're trying to fit the model into the need that we see that is most pressing right now. And for me, if we could make the need actually educating the students that we are systematically failing at every level, then I could say, okay, there's a reason for online education, there's an actual goal, and I can be completely behind it.
Yeah, Scott?
And I do think the conversation's moved in the last year because we were in this rationing period, and I was waiting for a policy proposal that was going to say 20% of all classes have to be taught online. I mean, some of you that have worked, you could see that would come down from on high. And it's like, oh my God, because I've been in a lot of these discussions. I was with the New York Times having this conversation with some of the best and brightest. You just had some of the best and brightest. But we know that you can't just say, 20% of community college faculty are ready to teach outstanding courses online, because you were talking about what was an effective faculty course, number one, or online course. It was an engaged faculty member. It was interactivity. It wasn't just going back to the days when we had closed circuit television on cable channels and you'd watch and that served one population. That's not going to be the expansion that we need. Now you see the governor saying, here's some money, $50 million for innovation, faculty-led innovation, not from system offices, but faculty-led innovation. And you also see, and I'm from one of the previous panels, Rich brought up the issue of, why do 112 different community colleges have different online course platforms when 30% of the students are taking classes at multiple colleges and a huge number, thousands of part-time faculty teaching multiple colleges? Everybody's got to use a different system. That would be like every time you go to your bank, the ATM is different. You have a different PIN for every branch. That's how we've been running things, and I think that might be changing.
Thank you.
I want to piggyback.
Sorry about that. I would also like to piggyback. Sorry. But really, if I could just add to some of these statements, I think that what really needs to happen is we really need to have more conversations like this. We need to bring together all constituency groups that are impacted by higher education, whether that is by higher education and online education, to have conversations like what we're having now. We're taking steps in the right direction, but we're still acting in silos. We're still separate systems. We're separate campuses even within the same system that are doing all sorts of different things, but we can't seem to collect a database of what everyone's doing. One thing that we're doing at the California State Student Association, CSSA, one of our students who's actually on staff with us, his name's Anthony Gibson. He's a student at Sacramento State. He actually headed up it's a white paper that we wrote, but it basically outlines priorities from the eyes of students surrounding online education specifically. And we have a meeting in Fullerton next weekend, and we're hoping to approve it. But it touches on things like quality, it touches on access, the platform, all these different things where we see discrepancies and we see differences and different philosophies from different campuses and different systems. And it's really helping us take some steps in the right direction because, everyone's talking about online education, but we aren't coming together consistently enough. We aren't bringing students, faculty, legislators, administrators. We aren't bringing everyone together consistently enough. And we're really trying to take some steps in the right direction to bring everyone on board with what's going on with online education, and really trying to bring those opinions to the same table.
Thank you.
Rich?
Just before we get off of the topic of the different demographic success rates, I go to the Peralta Community College District in Oakland and Berkeley, Emeryville, those northern or East Bay cities. And while I served on the Board of Trustees there as the student member of the board, we were dealing with our equity report, and in our equity report we talk about the different demographics that we serve and how we're doing and mostly how we're failing and those sorts of things. But in my experience in Peralta, which has been moderately extensive, it has become fairly apparent that when we talk about dealing with really complex, really important issues like closing those gaps, it's not something that we can just deal with in the community colleges. It's not something that we can just deal with in higher education. It's not something we can just deal with in education. When one of our students, or 5 in a year, get shot walking down the street and we have an obituary on, in the campus newspaper or whatever, that's a problem that drives students out of college. That's a problem that, Senator Mitchell mentioned the abysmal success rates in Oakland public schools. And as long as we're talking about how to move forward with a plan for the state on online education, in my opinion, that's something that we need to deal with all levels of our schools. Social services can provide laptops to low-income families. Why not? That's an incredibly important resource that is almost as important as shoes or something. That having internet and access to information right now in our society, that defines your mobility and your ability to get a job. So I think that we need to really pull in a much larger conversation when we're dealing with a plan for education.
And I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to piggyback really quickly off something Melody said that really hit me, and I think is really significant when you said I was selling myself short. And I speak to students all around the country, mostly at community colleges, and they come up to me and I see in their eyes that they have been selling themselves short most of their life. That they have been receiving messages, a lot of them subconscious, that they are not worthy. I did not think I was worthy of a master's degree. I wouldn't have said that if you had asked me, oh yeah, sure, I can do anything I want in the world. This is America. But subconsciously, when I got a scholarship to get a master's degree, I literally got weak in the knees and bawled my eyes out because I didn't actually think that was something I'd ever do. And I think
there are a lot of students who are selling themselves short. And for me, what changed as well, not only having the money to do it, it's huge, but also I had professors who would call me out and say, here's what I see in you, here's what I think you should do, and I think you should be a leader. I never saw myself doing something like this right here, right now, 5 years ago. And it was people who spoke that into me. So I wanted to just ask you guys, have there been any mentors or role models, or what helped you not sell yourself short? Because this is a very successful group. You are what we want for all of our students. What kept you dreaming big? And then do you have any suggestions for how we can, bring that hope to scale, and how maybe, as since we are talking about online, how we can make sure we don't miss that important component as we talk about online as a way to close gaps?
For me, I had to just come to the realization that I had to face my fears, and being able to face my fears and go after something that I thought was also impossible was I don't know, it's unexplainable. To me, it's a very it's pretty emotional for me, because I've gone through so much, just to get to where I'm at, and seeing my kids look at me now and say, wow, my dad's going to college, what college am I going to be going to, and I'm sending a message not only to my friends and saying, hey, I can do it, you can do it, but also, most importantly, are my kids, because I know technology is going to be at the forefront in the future, and they are going to learn, they are going to need to know at least, the basis of computer, technology, and that's it.
We have time for one more student response to that question, or?
Oh, wait, sorry, I feel like I'm dominating the conversation. But so I think this question is a really important question, and I think it directly relates to the success rates of certain populations, namely the Latino and African American populations, right? And so when anybody asks me the question of who inspired me or helped me get through, I say my mother. She's an amazing woman. She has taught me everything that I know, ranging from hard work, dedication, commitment, drive, self-determination, and for me, it's important to recognize those attributes in order for you not to sell yourself short, beginning in the household, right? So a lot of the times this negative reinforcement happens or occurs in the environments in which we are raised, right? And so it's important to think of ourselves and think of our immediate family members as those individuals that have those qualities that are not far removed from who we are, and that we should explore options and avenues that allow for us to manifest those skills or those characteristics as well. And so my mom, without knowing, with third grade education, political refugee or refugee from El Salvador, has mentored me in incredible ways, and I am my mother's daughter. That's why I'm so successful, I believe. It's because I try to be half the person that she is. She's amazing.
Thank you, Sophia.
Well, I'd like to thank our final panel for Michelle, Debbie, and Scott. I appreciate your time here for this conversation. But I also want to, in particular, recognize the student panel. This has been invaluable. They asked us to sort of give some wrap-up thoughts, and the most obvious one is what the purpose of this conference was. We need to hear directly from students what you guys are really going through. And so one of the things that really struck me wasn't just the fact that you guys were open and could speak at these very, the different levels, but there's also a level of inspiration here as well. The hard work. I'm working full-time. I'm going to get my job. I'm not going to let my background hold me back. And I'm going to go back and help others. So there's been a real inspiration here, as well as an identification of here's what students need to be successful. So I definitely want to really thank the student panel, thank 20 Million Minds for setting up the conference so that we could hear from them. We need more of this. And I'm speaking not just here to 20 Million Minds. I'm speaking to EDUCAUSE. I'm speaking to WCET. to the GSV advisors. We have so many conferences going on talking about educational innovation, and this is the most I've heard where students are directly involved in the conversation. So I personally want to put out a challenge that we need to change this. There needs to be a panel like this in the other conferences moving forward and actually hear from students and get them to be able to also answer or address what they're hearing from presenters. So that's what really struck me today is great student panel. We need more of this. And I also, final thought is the fact that it's got to be targeted solution. We have to understand, I think it was brought up very well here, what problem are we trying to solve? It can't be nebulous, we need more. It's got to be, we're increasing access and the access to a quality education that students can complete. We need to be specific so that we can then come in with holistic solutions and help our students in California actually complete their degrees, complete their transfer, whatever their educational goals are. So one thing that struck me, it was a very good conversation, not on abstract terms, but on very specifics of what do I need to meet my goals of getting a degree, getting a credential. So, so this has been a great panel. That's sort of my takeaway thoughts as we've done it, and I'd like to see if there's anything from Isa.
Sure, I think for final thoughts, I'm reminded of a statement I made in my very first speech I ever gave 3 years ago, and I also wrote this in my book. And I said, no matter how technological our world gets, opportunities happen through people. And I think this panel today has just confirmed that technology is not an answer, it's a great tool, but we have to remember the people not only creating it and what progress that can make, but also remembering that students still need support. They still want to be engaging with faculty. They don't want just this screen in front of them. They want to have that human interaction. And I think there is incredible growth and incredible beauty and incredible opportunity in that. And I just want to thank all of you for being here today, for caring so much, and everyone who served as a panel for all the work that you're doing. And then again, to our just incredible students. You're the reason why people work so hard. And you're also, I see, the future leaders who are going to be on this side and changing things, and that's what makes me very excited. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to bring Dean Flores back up to the stage and thank you for everything.
Thank you. You got it. Let's give Phil Hill and Isa Adney a huge hand for doing all this. And let's also give our students a huge hand for sitting this long through all of this thing and adding their voices. Very much appreciated. And for everyone who flew in and the panelists, thank you so much. I mean, I can tell you that, as Phil said, we've been to so many conferences where the student voice just isn't there. And in fact, most of the time we somehow make some assumptions, particularly on online, that we really need to check in with students. So I would, maybe if the governor's office is listening somewhere, and I know they're tuned in, maybe having a full-time student panel to vet all online legislation would be great. So Cynthia, you're in charge of that. So just so you know that. And, but if I could say, again, we need more of these. Phil's right. We need to travel. We need to vet. We need to look at everything that's coming out. $16.9 million in terms of the governor's investment is really just the first down payment to do online correct. And as I think as I heard the students, what needs to happen with online is a lot of scaffolding of a lot of support services that make it workable. And that's going to cost some money. And if you think about it, it means faculty development. It means faculty time. We need this new rising category of instructional design that needs to be built into almost everything that we're talking about today to make it really workable. And that's important. How many of you, most of us probably went to college, but how many of you had one of these really, really bad courses? Raise your hand. Like a really bad course you would never put anyone through. So if we just put that online and run it over and over and over, why would we ever want to do that 24/7? So the key is to make sure we design courses that are really made for students and that really engage students in a very serious way. Now let me just close and say that at the end of this conference always comes something that most of you have seen from last year's conference, and that is a trek and a discussion with our legislators. So if I can just summarize the three big things I heard today from a policy point of view and some milestones for the 20 Million Minds Foundation is first and foremost maybe building upon Senator Padilla's transfer legislation in terms of looking at all of the courses necessary for an articulated view through all three systems, has to have an online component, and we have to recognize these courses. So if you're taking an online course in stats, stats is stats is stats is stats in all three systems. That would make it a lot easier. And we need to build upon Senator Padilla's legislation to start, if you will, kind of overlaying the online environment in those discussions. That's going to make it a lot easier. And we'll hopefully see Senator Padilla now move even further before he is termed out in these last couple of months. And Michelle will probably look to you to have that discussion. I also think that in terms of online coordination, as been mentioned, we probably need to have more discussions with our faculty. This is a year of faculty ownership. Clearly last year was a year of faculty resistance. There's no doubt about it. Last year was, we're digging in, this is our curriculum, this is our university, and we're going to offer our students high quality, flexible courses. The next step this year then is, how do we do that? Who funds it? And ultimately, who is getting together to make this workable? So if faculty are going to own these courses, then we really need to band together and go to Sacramento and try to figure out what that package looks like, not just from a governor's point of view, but I think from a system point of view. Two other things. Credit coordination was kind of mentioned, but not. Again, the credit is a credit, and we really need to try to figure out, if we are going to online environments, how do we grant the credit in a way that the institutions own it? And I think I mentioned right at the beginning of this, the math dilemma, the basic skills bottleneck. Michelle's talked a lot about this in some sense in some of the reports. The reality is that we have 2.4 million students in our California community colleges. A good half of them are 3 levels below in developmental math. Only 25% of all our courses are aimed at that. We immediately have a structural bottleneck. Kids are waiting 2 semesters to get the course necessary, to get the credit necessary to take science. And we need to solve that. And if online isn't part of that equation, we're never going to be able to scale up from a physical plant perspective to offer the courses necessary for students to have a path to completion. That means that only 6% meet their goals in 3 years. That's just not a workable solution. So online has to be part of that discussion. And I would reach out even further than Phil, than some of our partners. I would reach out to the vendors out there, McGraw-Hill, Pearson, Cengage, after being reconfigured. The goal is to really ask and challenge you to come with products that meet the developmental English and developmental math categories, and I'd be remiss to say English as a second language issues with technology, and to make sure that you have the support necessary to make sure students are successful. The last thing I would say is that we need content coordination. Phil mentioned it a minute ago. OER, free open material, shared material, all important. There still is a cost factor for our students here. How many of you guys buy your books the first day of school, the first day? Okay. Books cost money. Content should be shared. We need to make sure as we build these courses out that we have shared content that is built into online that's free to the student. There's no doubt about that. So with that, I'll just simply say we do have some big policy perspectives from the foundation's goals in terms of Sacramento. We have friends. Holly Mitchell, again, want to thank her for coming. She's a big player in this. Daryl Steinberg's a big player in this. There's a lot of folks who will be looking this year to figure out what they're going to do with all of those bills that didn't make it to the governor. This is the last half of the game. That's normally when everybody really comes out and starts to play. So hopefully you'll see a lot more movement on the online front, but hopefully after today, we'll be able to take these learnings and go forward. The last thing I'll say is we have a Twitter feed. I would encourage you, if you missed any of this, to start from the very beginning and to reverse the process and read anything you may have missed. I think there were a lot of great comments on Twitter today. I really want to thank all those who participated. And of course, we'll have a live video transcript of this on YouTube, panel by panel, that will be available to anyone to rehash some of these issues today. So hopefully you can see that as well. The last thing, of course, I'd be remiss to say thank you to Dr. Gary Michelson and Alia Michelson for allowing us to do the work we do at 20 Million Minds. We're very, very thankful and of great support from our founder. And the last point would be, I need to introduce some people that made all this happen. Myra Lambera, Sergio Rojas, Reed, Milburn, Suzanne, Paul, and Liz Gonzalez. Thank you so much for putting all this together. And the last thing is, the good thing about this conference is you get to walk down 3 floors, not up. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.